2025 was a pretty good year for me. It was a busy year, absolutely. It was a busy year, but it was great, great, great fun when it came to whiskey. It really was. And I truly believe that, and call me optimistic, the theme for the vPubs in 2026 is going to be all about happiness and the joy that we find when we share whiskey together. But I am an optimist. And despite a lot of interesting dynamics happening in whiskey right now, I think 2026 is going to be another fantastic year that builds on all the joy that we shared in 2025. Let's see what you think. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to have some predictions for 2026. We're going to measure and take stock of where we are right now at the start of 2026. And I'll be looking for some input from you guys as well. We'll make it as interactive as we possibly can. Looking forward to it as always. And I'll see you in a second. Hello, whiskey folk. Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. I know it's been a wee while, and I fully suspect that I'll certainly be a wee bit rusty tonight after 3 full weeks away from the vPub, and that's okay. And I hope that you're comfortable. And if you're feeling a wee bit rusty and out of sorts and things, I apologise. I didn't know what to do with myself on a Thursday night either. But we're back. It's the 15th of January. It's been a longer winter break than usual, but I did really, really benefit from it. I benefited from just taking a step back from whiskey in general and all the kind of buzz and notifications and everything that goes on. But just kind of having time to ponder and consider whiskey from a distance. I did watch some whiskey content over the break. I certainly enjoyed some drams over the Christmas break. Of course you do. Christmas, the holidays, New Year, all of that kind of stuff. I certainly shared some whiskey and enjoyed it very, very much. But my feeling as I sit in front of you today is that there has been a very clear break. And it was only when I was on that break, it's only when I was doing less, I think I realised with the benefit of hindsight how much I was actually doing. And these things are good. I always take a break in the summer and I always take a break in the winter time. And I think they are the things that keep me enthused and really excited to hop up in the bar stool every Thursday night to bring the vPub back to you again. Looking forward to this year. I hope you guys are too. Tonight is what we do. It's become a bit of a tradition, although I'm going to stop trying to make the daft predictions that I've made in years gone by. Silly, quite tongue-in-cheek fun predictions and things like that. Maybe there'll be one tonight. But instead I'm going to use tonight's vPub just to get back into the swing of it again with all of you guys and to take stock of where we are in whiskey right now, because some of the content that I was consuming over the break, I was almost a wee bit frustrated that I couldn't get involved in the discussion because there were things being said that they failed to make distinctions about certain things. We'll get into that tonight. I want to talk about whiskey, the condition of whiskey generally. I want to talk about some things that I maybe predict. I would suggest maybe it's less of a prediction and more of me being an optimist and things that I might want to see. But I think I have to start with a caveat like we always do right at the beginning for everyone to understand. I do not work in the whiskey industry. I can be called on that. I suppose because of what I do today, some people might paint it as such. But I'm not behind the scenes. I'm not making decisions. I don't have insight or hindsight I can't look behind the curtains or under the hood at what decisions are being made at various whiskey producers across the country. I always try to keep a wee bit of distance and always try to keep my perspective from the perspective of a consumer, a punter, somebody who's putting their hands in their pocket to buy their whiskey with their own cash. And that means that when I give my opinions and when I share my opinions with you, not only do they resonate, but hopefully there is some value in it for people that are making decisions behind the scenes and producing whiskey. Even if I make some clumsy mistakes and things from time to time, we all do, and I think that's okay. Anyway, let's do what we always do to kick off 2026. Let's welcome you all. Let's wish you a very, very happy new year, the very best of health, prosperity, happiness, whatever it is you're looking for in 2026. It's wonderful to welcome you here. Cheers, everyone. It's great to be back. Let's do what we always do and hop into the lounge. Welcome, some of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. How are you all? I'll scroll back up a wee bit and catch some of the comments. Again, Malt, it's James in Sweden. Good to see you, buddy. He's saying good evening, Aquavita, and happy new year. Good to be back and see you on the telly again. I'm on your telly tonight. I hope that's not too troubling for you, buddy. I've struggled to get the camera set up, so it's looking a wee bit odd to me. Maybe a wee bit dull. I need to change some settings or whatever, but it's fine. You don't really need to see me as much as hear me, right? Julian Rickman is saying, evening, Roy, evening, Barflies. Good to be back in the vPub and hope you've had a great break. I have, Julian, and I hope you've had a great time over Christmas, New Year too. Whiskey Weekend Dram. Good to see Harry saying hi, Roy Aquaviti. Bit of a dry during this week, so only tea and water tonight. Tomorrow, bring your own bottle night, so no worries. Okay, so it's good to have a wee break. You know that you're going to be having an enjoyable Friday night with it. Bring out your own bottle and some pals. And if that means that you're hopping up in your bar stool tonight with a cup of tea, Harrow, you're still very welcome here, my friend. Fairnight Walker is saying, good evening, Roy Aquaviti and all the barflies. Great to have the vPub back. Kind of miss you all. Hope you're all doing great. I missed it myself. I always do, but I think that's a good thing. The danger comes when I step away from the vPub for a break and don't miss it. Don't want to get back in the seat again kind of thing, but it's brilliant to have you here. Whiskey Mirko is celebrating being a member of the Barflies for 24 months. Thank you so much, my friend Mirko in Germany. He's saying, welcome back, Roy, and Happy New Year to everyone. Happy New Year to you too, my friend. It looks like somebody's joined the Barflies. I'm going to try and read. Oh, no, okay, I can read that. The Honest Take by Sid Hunt. Sid, it's nice to have you here. It's nice to have you signing up and supporting as a Barfly, my friend. Thank you, Sid, Mirko, and everybody else I'm just about to mention. They sign up to the YouTube membership here. It's $1.99 a month. And what that $1.99 does is it gets you access to a wee loyalty Barfly badge and channel-themed whiskey emoji, of course. But the biggest thing it does is it keeps all the content on the Aquaviti channel completely ad-free. I hate ads. My pal Lee J is here. Good to see you, buddy. Saying hi, Roy, and all the Barflies. Happy New Year. Thank you so much for being a Barfly for 69 months, Lee J. Andrew Doer. I never know how to pronounce your surname, Andrew Doer. We just say Andrew. Good to have you here, buddy. He's bought someone a gift membership. Thank you so much, buddy. Thank you for your support as a Barfly. Alistair Gray is celebrating being a member for 70 months, and he's saying here's to 2026 and more Barfly memories. And Tom Franey is celebrating being a member for 30 months, saying Happy New Year, Roy, and all the Barflies. Thank you all very much for your support, and Happy New Year right back at you, Tom, and everyone. Great to have you. And Alistair's sentiment about making new memories this year is very much what I'm looking forward to. I think the reason I had such a buoyant 2025 was the amount of kind of events and in real life things, the opportunities that we had together. Gene Kelly saying, so nice to welcome you back into our home. Here's hoping whiskey world is better in 2026 than the real world. I think I'm trying to think of a time when the whiskey world wasn't better than the real world, but I hear you, buddy. I hear you, Gene. We're facing always the strangest of times, it seems just now. Thorpass Whiskey is saying, cheers, Roy. Happy to be back here. Good to see you, Tim. I hope you're keeping well, my friend. And of course, Jimmy Legg from Eastern Canada is in, saying you barely work at all, Aquaviti. I hope I make it look like that. That would be an achievement, Jimmy. Wonderful to have you in. I hope you and Angie are doing very well. Happy New Year to you both. Jim is, that's Jim Morse, I think, looking for the wee icon. He's saying, first time live in months, Jim. It's brilliant to have you. It doesn't matter how long it has been. You can stumble up here anytime you like, and just treat it like you haven't left at all. Brian Stormont is saying, great to be back, celebrating 36 months as a Barfly. Brilliant to have you, buddy. Great to have you in, Brian. And Frank Peathead, good to see you, big guy, saying, evening, barman. Great vPub is open again with you behind the bar. It's a pleasure to be here, buddy, and it's nice to welcome you too. Timothy is saying, Timothy, I'm really sorry, but that jumped and I scrolled quite a wee bit back. I'm going to try and catch your comment, my friend. I'm going to do my best. I suspect I was really quite far back and I've missed it, Timothy. I hope I get a chance to catch another comment from you. That's terrible. There's quite a lot of you in. We're over 300 already. Sorry, I know that I tend to be a wee bit poor these days when it's a busy vPub at picking out everybody's comments. But I'm going to try and do my best tonight, because if you're typing in Aquavitae or at Aquavitae, make sure the spelling's right. It should highlight for me, and I can catch your comments, such as Philip Wagner saying, good evening, Happy New Year. Graham Malt is saying, on the telly every time. So you are using the TV. Brilliant. Gino is saying, evening, Roy. Looking good, buddy. We've missed you. I missed you too, Gino. Hope you're doing well. Tom Elmer is saying, Happy New Year, Slancha. Good to see you, big guy. Jimmy Legg is saying, you look as good as you possibly can. You always look much better in person. I see the 2026 has not dulled the cutting wit in any way whatsoever, Jimmy. Brilliant to have you. My pal Rob Halford's here as well. Good to see you, buddy. He's saying, 2026 has properly started. Aquavitae, you've been missed. Nice to have you and saying nice things, Rob. It's brilliant to have you, buddy. Hellswood is saying, wonderful to have you. The bar open again. Good to see you, Helen. How's Andy? Working, no doubt. And Philip Shegrin, he's full up. I think you're in Switzerland, I think. No dry January for me. Born on the 17th of January. There is no way. So 17th of January, you have, oh no, say these the 17th of December. Philip, it's nice to have you in, buddy. Felsgraph is saying, Happy New Year, Roy, and to all. And Paul Gids is in. That's Paul Gidley, I think. Paul, good to see you. Great to have you back. Hi to all. And Whisky Games, Matt Bishop's here. Hi, Roy. It should be another great year for drinking wonderful whiskey in the community. Matt, I hope so. Nice to have you, buddy. And Billy Bennett saying, look forward to a good 2026 and many great vPubs. Only a week until it's the Whisky Festival here in Bergen. So looking forward to that. It's weird to think that Whisky Festival season is kicking off again. There's a chance that I might make it along to the National Festival in Glasgow on SWG3 on the 24th, I think that is. Fingers crossed. I'll be able to make that, and I might bump into some of you there. And that kind of kicks off the festival season for 2026. We've got the Independent Spirits Festival in March, Fife Festival in February, and we've got Limburg potentially in April. And that leads us quite quickly into summertime. And then as we come back from summer, we start to look forward to some of the other festivals. We've obviously got May. We can't miss May. Campbelltown Malts Festival in May. But we've obviously got everything happening in Glasgow again in 2026 in November. So we're already looking at the spots in the calendar and working where do we need to save the money for, right? And what can we get up to? What can we enjoy in the year ahead? Tim's bought me a dram. Right after Jim's been celebrating being a member of the Barflies for 34 months, Jim Morse, thank you so much. And celebrating with all of you, says Tim, after 4 months of waiting for doctors and tests that I do not have prostate cancer, waiting to find out either way is stressful. Heck, now that you've made it and now that you don't, I think I'll raise a wee glass to you and say quite literally, slanch it. Well done, Tim. Cheers to you, fella. That must have been a difficult time. Jimmy Legg is saying 2025 was a terrible year. We didn't get to Scotland and we didn't get to see everyone. 2026 is going to be the best year ever. So that suggests that you are indeed going to make it over to Scotland in 2026, Jimmy. I think you're aiming for November this time around, maybe for the Glasgow Whisky Festival. Let me know, buddy. It would be wonderful to welcome you both here again, of course. Alistair McPhail is in. Good to see you, buddy. Saying Happy New Year, Aquavitae and all the Barflies. Hope 2026 will be a good year for whiskey. It will certainly be a great one with whiskey friends. I think what we're going to spend a lot of time tonight trying to do is defining what a good year for whiskey means. A good year for who? Yeah, a good year for collectors, a good year for producers, a good year for mass market, a good year for flippers, a good year for enthusiasts, geeks, whiskey botherers, whiskey drinkers, a good year for smaller independents. It's going to be interesting to see. Dave in BV, Dave in Bavaria, is that Dave in BV? I think I used to get your name. I feel like I've got it right in the past, but you bought me a dram, my friend. Thank you so much. You're not in Bavaria. Dave in BV is US dollars. Thank you very much. No comment, just a generous dram. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Jimmy. And cheers to him. All right. Let's start by talking about where we are in 2026 as we kick off this year. And if I was to ask you, what is the condition and state of whiskey and whiskey's health in 2026, I think you would all suggest that it's in a bit of a depression. It's in a bit of the doldrums. Mass market doldrums, perhaps. And I have to kick that whole topic off and just kind of pick it up, chew it for a little bit and get it out of the way quite quickly. I think that this whole mass market thing is going to weave its way into our discussions throughout tonight because we can't get away from it. There is a situation in whiskey right now where a lot of producers are feeling pressure. And that's causing them to make decisions and make modifications to their business strategy and things like that that is going to impact everyone that stands at whiskey's side in some form or another, either today or at some point in the future. These are things that we can't really control. We sit here as whiskey enthusiasts. We are the people that just feel so very fortunate that we discovered this wonderful, wonderful thing. And I don't mean that from the perspective of, oh, we've got a lovely alcoholic drink that we can enjoy. To the majority of us that hang out in the vPub every Thursday night, the fact that there's alcohol in this is actually something that we're trying to push against, because we're here for the flavour, the texture, the enjoyment, what whiskey brings for us in terms of, social connect, interesting histories, stories, remarkably different flavors, despite the fact that it's all just made from grain. That's what draws us in. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I don't enjoy the fact that there's alcohol involved here, but we're all affected by alcohol in a slightly different way. And I think that everything I've just mentioned in the last couple of sentences is at play when we talk about this concept of mass market doldrums. Let me try to explain. However, I've had a dram bought for me by my pal. That looks like a dram from David Hong in New York. He never says much, David. He's quite a quiet chap, but he's always very, very generous. Thank you very much for your dram, buddy. It's nice to have you here. One of the distinctions I want to hang on quite heavily tonight is this idea of mass market. But I also want to make a definition, not just in the case of whiskies and whiskey and enthusiasts versus mass market. I also want to talk about how the whiskey enthusiasts are really, we're not here for a drink. I think there are many, many other drinks out there that you can drink for drinking's sake. Mixed drinks, beers, wines, all of these things. It's not to suggest that there can't be a really delicious and well-crafted cocktail. It's not to suggest that there can't be a really delicious wine, whether it's red, white, whatever your wine preferences are. Really good quality wine made for flavor. The exact same for beer. But the majority of the stuff, if you go out into any place to buy your alcohol, your liquor, whatever it may be, you're going to be presented typically with mass market products. That's products that lead with the brand and reassurances of consistency, and probably trade heavily on buying shelf space and trying to be fairly competitive on price as well, which puts pressure on quality and flavor and things like that from time to time, but we'll get into that. We are not going into those places typically to buy our whiskey if we have alternatives available. Depending on where you live, what you're going to try to do is seek out where you can get really, really, really high quality, high engagement, natural, well-presented whiskies that bring a completely different pleasure offering than simply a drink. So let's make a really extreme example of it. On the mass market side of things, let's put a bottle of Glenfiddich 12, if you're talking about malt, or if you're talking about whiskey in general, you could talk about Dewar's White Label, Johnnie Walker Red Label, a multitude of other blends. These are things that the consumer expects to be the exact same every single time. So they tend to be typically buying that and drinking that, consuming it, and replacing it with something that's the exact same or very, very similar. That's the opposite of what we're interested in. The reason that we overaccumulate, just end up with so many bottles of whiskey, is that we're not chasing the same experience every time. It's not just a drink to us. We're after variation. We're after really contemplative enjoyment and engagement. We're after flavor. That's what we chase. Mouthfeel, texture, finish. Lots of other things too. Certainly we spend hours and hours and hours. I would argue I spend more time nosing a whiskey than I do actually drinking it. But it's a weird concept to get across to a lot of people. That's where we occupy our time. So every conversation that we have is affected by that space that we occupy. So while I have to try hard to caveat a lot of the points I'm going to make tonight, I'm going to be firmly focused on my thoughts on everything being from occupying that space. And I know that you're here with me hanging out tonight because you feel similar to that. Okay, that being said, if I am clumsy with anything that I say going forward tonight, we need to remember that. We need to remember, if I tell you that I don't think the market is in the doldrums, that's where I'm coming from. And I'm going to try and give you reasons why I think that the whiskey market right now is actually much more vibrant than anybody imagines that it is. Like I say, the theme for 2026 going ahead for me is going to be happiness. And that means that if you're going to try and be happy, you're going to try and kind of dwell on the optimistic side of things. But we can't just blindly go on, head in the clouds, humming our wee favourite tune, happy, happy, while down below everything is just going to... We can't do that. I have to give you reasons why I think things are healthy and good and strong, and also have to maybe make suggestions based on me just being a consumer and a punter from the outside, how it could be potentially a wee bit better. There's the caveat again from our perspective. Highland Hamish is here. Good to see you, buddy. Saying greetings from Inverness. Sorry for being late to the first party of 2026. There's no such thing as being late to the vPub, Hamish, but it's brilliant to welcome you here, buddy. I hope things are brilliant up in Inverness. I know you've had the weather, haven't you? You've been fighting the snow. We've hardly had a flake down in Glasgow. Burkey is here. Good to see you, my friend. How are you doing? Happy New Year on Barflies. Hope you're very well. Isla, cask rested. Botanist gin and tonic in the glass. Highly recommend. Good for you, buddy. You're welcome here regardless of what you're sipping. And if you need a wee refresher, you go right ahead and enjoy that. Ahoy, Maltmate, says Everwind. Good to see you in, my friend. How are you doing? That's Chris in the States. Petehead is saying, well, not everyone gathers that amount of bottles. Well, some of us are a wee bit more disciplined than others, Frank, no doubt. Rick Johnson, San Francisco. He's saying, good afternoon, Happy New Year from San Francisco, Roy, and fellow wonderful, over-accumulating barflies. Yet some of us are a wee bit like Frank, who are a bit canny. We've been in the game long enough to know exactly what we like, and we just buy what we like. I have to say, I often wonder if I didn't broadcast every Thursday night, and if I wasn't such a kind of promiscuous, whiskey-curious type, I wonder if I would have dialed in my favourites and just selected a much more narrow range. I think if I am going to do what I do every Thursday night, I have to continue to try as many things as possible and keep my vision as wide as possible. But I think if I was doing things a bit differently, I think I would probably be a wee bit more narrow and focused. But I think that's okay. There's room in the vPub and in whiskey generally for us all, I think. Falsgraph is saying, you say things differently, but I feel you're on the same wavelength as Andre Whisky Tales Liquid. That's Andre Habrecht, I think. Two brothers, on the same positive track. Sounds good. I think if it is Andre, I think it's Andre Habrecht. He's putting content out there, class, in the German language, isn't he, buddy? He was actually on a vPub 2 or 3 years ago, just before everything changed in the market. Master Chief Sea Chest, that's Mark. Good to see you, buddy. Hope your holidays were wonderful, Roy. They were, Mark, and I hope yours were too. Jimmy Legg is saying you're doing things exactly right. Don't ever change, Aquaviti. Thank you, Jimmy. I don't think I have much capability in me to change too much, if I'm honest. So if I'm doing all right, that's very, very fortunate. When will, sorry, everyone to saying, well, when I realized, sorry, I need to start again. Well, when I recently read in the 2026 Malt Whisky Yearbook, it seems that premiumization seems to be working for the industry. I would love people from the industry to step forward in 2026 and demonstrate how wonderful a job they've been done by premiumizing their whiskey, by overselling. Is just another, premiumization is another word for overselling. I would love to hear how that is a long-term benefit to whiskey. But I hear you. There are people out there that will spout and say that it's doing great, great, great things. I would suggest that there's plenty of spaces in whiskey you could look today to see how it has been clumsily used for very short-term gains. The Canuck reporting for duty. Welcome back, pal, says Eric Cunliffe. Eric's got a wee night off tonight. It's wonderful to have him in. Great to have you, buddy. I hope Renee is doing well. Happy New Year, Eric. And Graham Young is joined the Aquaviti Barflies. Graham, you've been a member of the Barflies for a long, long, long time. I suspect that there's a wee catch-up needing done there on the account sync. And Barry Coleman is saying, Happy New Year, Roy. Looking forward to 2026 with the Barflies. Going to drop out and we'll catch on the replay. Barry, now that you're back joining us on the replay, it's nice to have you, my friend. Happy New Year. Get comfortable. And Tim is saying, these days I'm mostly buying at auction, as these days people are converting collections to money, and there are wonderful bottles available. You know, it was one of the things that I scratched off the list tonight, because I suspect at some point down the line, maybe this year's the year to do it, I'm going to, you know, squirrel a wee bit of money aside and just put it all on an auction exercise to see what gems I can uncover and share it with you in a vPub. I've been meaning to do that for years, but I found auctions really frustrating for a while. But now auctions seem to be a much more kind of reasonably priced, comfortable space again. It depends on what you're looking for, of course. You know, the rare stuff, the gems, the in-demand stuff remain in demand. But all the kind of oversold stuff that we all get excited about, the stuff that got overheated for a couple of years, that's all back firmly in our lap once more. PX Woodhouse is in. Good to see you. Slightly concerned if premiumization won't work, then it may become a race to the bottom. It's funny how we do focus on that pendulum, isn't it? That kind of, it swings to the extreme. Everything's so expensive, and you know, we're back in maybe 2021 or something like that, and it's just wild. And we're all working together as a community to try and uncover gems in a really difficult landscape where everything seems overpriced and the prices are continually climbing, which makes cask investment and all these other things very, very interesting, when I really don't believe it should be. It's okay to invest in something. If you're going to buy a cask and you know, 10 or 15 or 20 years down the line, you're going to cash it in. But if you're going to invest in whiskey because you see it as a commodity, like a metal or so many other things, I think that's a shame, because we're talking about something that is made for sharing and consumption. It's just my own opinion, of course. Anyway, I feel that depending on where you are and where you speak from, you could have two extremes of that pendulum right in front of you right now. In terms of the market doldrums, you could have someone like me that's going to sit back and say, what doldrums? I need to be honest. The YouTube viewing figures are down. The subscription rates and growth rates on YouTube are down significantly. Anywhere that you look online in whiskey, it's not as it was in 2020. It just isn't. And there's no surprise that all that online content for whiskey is out there now, whether it's on YouTube, on social media feeds, whether it's, you know, any place online where people gather for whiskey, you know, databases and Dramface and places like that. We know it's there now. So the growth is slower. The only way that it can grow really these days is for more people to come into the hobby to the sector, to the area, to the space of whiskey, you know, rather than people that are already there becoming engaged, as was been happening up till now. Everything has slowed down a little bit. But the support for what I do, the support for what we do in other areas, such as Online Scotch Whisky Awards, Dramface, the Independent Spirits Festival, any project that I'm involved in is absolutely vibrant. It's every bit as enjoyed and loved, and you know, the positivity around it is palpable. It's really, really difficult to overstate how much fun it is. And it's busy. The tickets for the events sell out far too quickly. The buzz, the happiness, you turn up at any of these festivals and the place is just vibrant and full of people loving whiskey. I feel no difference from 2015, 2020, or today. Other dynamics notwithstanding, of course, such as pandemics and the like. But I feel that they're still there. What we had over the pandemic was this artificial kind of swelling of interest from people that may have been just on the outside or on the periphery that came into it for a little while for various reasons. Now that they've gone, there's a correction, right? The pendulum swings back in the other direction. And rather than find some balance in the middle, we tend to find ourselves maybe worried about things like a race to the bottom. So I'm going to talk about that tonight because PX is a good thing to bring up. It definitely is. And when we talk about a race to the bottom, what we're probably talking about there in your context is the idea that, you know, premiumization was when things were potentially oversold. But now a natural reaction to the demand dropping so violently in whiskey generally is that things will become very, very cheap very, very quickly. And a race to the bottom becomes a desperation of just you know, turning something into cash, just getting things moving again. I suspect that we need to always try to focus on that. Somehow that pendulum has to settle a bit closer to the middle, right? It's not a great analogy because a pendulum needs to swing, right, by definition. But for me, it would be much more on coming up with strategies that were a bit longer term, medium to longer term strategy that could bring a bit of balance, a bit of reliability, a bit of order, and a bit of understanding. And that's kind of going to weave into most of what I'm going to talk about tonight. In the glass, I've got something that talks about that mass market thing pretty well. I'm enjoying this dram. I'm enjoying this dram more than I expected to, but I'll tell you what it is. And we can test this new cameras to see if it's going to focus all, but as long as it does, the same as the last one, yeah, it's pretty much the same. This is a Speyburn 10, but I want you to look a wee bit closer because you'll see a band here. It's travel retail exclusive, or travel exclusive it says. And if I spin it around, you might be able to pick out, then it says 46% ABV. And if you look at my finger here, you might also see the words non-chill filter. This is Speyburn making a big deal for a travel retail exclusive, which is interesting to me because the Speyburn 10 was always typically a 40% ABV. So that's diluted to the lowest alcohol strength that whiskey can be and still legally be called whiskey, by the way. And that's not because I heard somebody say recently that that was the way that the whiskey was designed by the producer for it to be optimal. Why would we want the strength to be anything different if they decide that 40% is the best strength? We should accept that. They are the experts. That is just the type of guy I want to sit down with and hang out for a little while and chat through. There's just so many angles you can bring. So many glasses of whiskey you can put in front of each other in order to realize that that's not the case. 40% whiskey is out there because that is the most profitable strength. Experience tells us that 40% whiskey can be delicious. It's true. It really, really can. But our cookie trail of whiskies tends to lean towards things that are different ABV incidentally. We don't pick a bottle of whiskey and buy it because it's a higher strength ABV. The higher ABV is incidental. because at higher strength, there's more flavour, there's more character in the whiskey, yes, but it's not absolutely guaranteed. A higher ABV tells us that it's not been diluted. There's a bit less water in the bottle, so it's got space for flavour. The higher ABV also tells us there is a chance that it's not been stripped through chill filtration. This bottle tells us that it has been non-chill filtered. So those oils, precious fats, those esters, those flavour delivery mechanisms that exist inside the bottle, as well as bringing mouthfeel and texture, are preserved and they're still there. So the alcohol strength is everything to do with profit. Everything to do with, if you see a higher ABV whiskey and if you see statements like non-chill filtered on there, they've done that very, very deliberately. And if you see nothing on there and you see 40% strength, they're very, very deliberately giving you minimum information. This is an interesting one because we can test it. Because I also have the 10-year-old Speyburn here at 40% ABV, and notice that strap that says non-chill filtered is missing. I'm not going to do it in front of you tonight. Just trust me that this Speyburn is good quality Scotch single malt whiskey. It meets, absolutely meets, and arguably against some of its competitors, surpasses a little bit. What an inexpensive entry-level bottle of Scotch single malt whiskey could and should be. However, it has been compromised. And if you need any reassurances of that, then you could maybe seek out a bottle of this and maybe seek out a bottle of that travel retail version, because then you've got two exact same recipe products that you can, okay, batch production aside, we'll go on to that. You can try them side by side. And immediately you've got this vivid, visceral image, this sensory image even, of a mass market whiskey versus a whiskey that's been treated with a wee bit more care from the exact same stable, the exact same profile, the exact same distillery. That's not easy to find. How ironic is it that Speyburn in 2025 turned their back on natural presentation and went for that race to the bottom? They started to chase the market that needs it to be as cheap as possible and as easy to sell as possible. So with lower ABV, chill filtration comes into it. Now it loses a bit of texture, it loses a bit of flavour. It certainly loses also a little bit of colour. Of course it's going to lose colour. If you're adding water, what's going to happen? You dilute the colour. You make it paler. Pale whiskey is not as easy to sell as dark whiskey, so of course they're tempted then to do what? One of the most horrendous things that exists in whiskey. I'll rally against it forever, and that is the addition of E158 colouring. It just should never exist in order to artificially change the colour of a natural product. Now that might be fine, and we can find it everywhere. But in whiskey and in booze in general, in whiskey, they do not need to put it on the label that E150A has been added. That will change. I hope I'm alive to see it. But you just cannot put fake stuff inside something and not tell anyone that you've done that. Not today. Anyway, that is what's happening at Speyburn. Unfortunately, we also see a similar policy happening at their sister distillery, Knockdo, which is the Anok brand, where they've gone from 46% beautiful, all-natural, I mean, real kind of cult whiskies from Anok. We've seen them rendered. They've brought back their cult 16-year-old, for example, and have put out 43% chill filtered. Somebody's not reading the room. Or arguably they are reading the room, and the room that they're reading is from the demand of people that need the whiskey to be as accessible and as cheap as possible. Fine. That's the short-term game, I think. Why? Because I really don't think that people are picking up a bottle of Speyburn 10, Glenfiddich 12, anything, and saying, wow, that tastes fabulous, and going and buying more of the same. I think that they're picking it up and saying that tastes satisfactory. I think once you get into whiskey, the whiskey that we've fallen in love with, everything changes. the flavor, the reaction that you have to it, those kind of seminal moments, the epiphanies, the kind of standing there and staring at the glass. Ridiculous thing for a middle-aged man to be talking about. I hear myself, I really do. But you know it to be true because you've experienced it yourself. That tends not to happen with 40% whiskies. It's possible and it can, but we know the real epiphanies come in densely flavored, rich, thick, oily, natural whiskies. So that's going to be the focus for tonight. Obviously, Sean Causer is saying, could it be the likes of Speyburn will run an 80-20 split between mass market and enthusiast to make a distillery more sustainable? It could be, Sean, but again, and there's some strategies out there from some companies. Interestingly, Lochlea is one of them, where they've got a 12-year-old range at 46% ABV and unchill filtered. They're a 12-year-old original, their 12-year-old Inchmurrin, the fruity one, 12-year-old Inchmoan, the peaty one. And these are going to be continually sold through specialist stores with that 46% ABV. And more the Lochlea Group whiskies we're starting to see shifting more towards natural. But they also have a legacy of supporting supermarkets, global travel retail, various markets out there that demand a cheaper product and lower ABV, maybe hotter climates, arguably. They don't want high-strength whiskies and things. Look, so they're bringing out other products and they're kind of doing a foot in both lanes type strategy. So they'll have stuff for the specialist market and they'll have stuff for the mass market. I think that's going to be a difficult thing to pull off. Generally speaking, if you see Lochlea in one hand and Lochlea in the other, and they look very similar and the branding is similar and things, I don't know how it's easy to distinguish, but nevertheless, they all need to figure out strategies that suits them going forward. And that seems to be what Lochlea have chosen. I would choose Lochlea's route forward over Speyburn and Knockdhu's route from Inverhouse every day of the week. I am absolutely heartbroken. And over the years, if you've been around here long enough, you'll have heard me talking about Knockdhu. Sorry, Anok is the brand. And you would have heard me certainly talking in recent years about Speyburn a lot. And it was everything to do with how good the whiskey was and how fairly priced it was. It's obviously not been successful for them for whatever reason, because they wouldn't have taken a successful model and changed it so drastically. We're here for the natural stuff. Everyone is saying, it wasn't that long ago, my whiskey journey that Glenlivet 12-year-old was a premium whiskey, which is funny considering our earlier discussion. I'm curious about targeted whiskey markets. I would suggest to you, and in the past, we've tried old versions of bottles, Glenmorangie 10, Glenfiddich 12, certainly Glenlivet 12, and we've been comparing them to much more up-to-date versions, haven't we? And it's not that we're going mad or crazy or loopy. The whiskey has changed over time. It's a natural product, and that's what it does. But it's not just about barley. It's not just about different casks and all. It's about market dynamics. It's about everything. That we know that whiskey benefits hugely from using high-quality barley, distilled slowly with extended fermentation and all of these great things. But when you're trying to set up to shift patterns and you're taking your capacity and the structure and the layout of your distillery, and sometimes the fermentation times just become incidental in how you balance the production of the distillery. It's very, very rare for anyone to start at the time it takes to ferment and work backwards from there, because that's, guess what? More expensive. So we see that the product as the demand for whiskey waxes and wanes over the years, we see the end product changing, because the new make, however it's made, goes into the cask, and if it's made in a different way, it'll mature in a different way, and it'll come out with a slightly different profile. Sometimes quite a remarkably different profile over the years. We can demonstrate that. We can go into auction, we can buy things from the past, the recent past, and 10, 20, 30 years ago. If you go back to the 1990s, it's quite remarkable how many good quality, really quite delicious blends, even things like Johnnie Walker Black from the 90s. If you buy a 90s bottle, it's just so much better. And that makes sense because in the 90s, remember, they would have been climbing out of, whiskey would have been crawling back from a place of depression in the 1980s, late 70s into the 80s. So there would have been probably quite a lot of a 12-year-old age statement on a Johnnie Walker Black, for example. There would have been a lot of stock, quite a deep stock, for them to choose to put together the Johnnie Walker. And in times of trying to grow the product, they would have been growing it based on quality as well, and they would have potentially been overaging. And I guarantee that that's not happening today, or it hasn't been in recent years, because you can taste Johnnie Walker 12 today, and it tastes nothing like that product from the 1990s. And you can copy and paste and do a similar kind of summary of so many other whiskies out there. I will caveat, in my experience, Glenmorangie 10 has been remarkably consistent over the years, and it kind of remains a wee favourite of mine today, even though they've upped the age to 12 years old. More on that. More on that as a dynamic, as a thing that's happening a wee bit later. Falscraft is saying a distillery usually puts out 46 plus and suddenly does one at 40. I might believe there is a reason, but not if 46 is an exception. Well, the thing about Speyburn, as an example, they always had a 40% whiskey available. Annock as well from Knockdhu Distillery, they always had a 40% available. 10-year-old in the case of the Speyburn, and they had a non-age statement. What was it called? Speyburn, was it Bradennorach? Can't remember. Or is that the Glenacadam? Can't remember now. I never bought it. And the Annock 12-year-old as well, obviously 40% ABV. So they could see both. So while they've kind of been looking at the market, they've been under so much pressure in recent times, it could be that they've just said, right, let's just get it all out there. Let's make it as cheap as we possibly can. I don't even want to say good luck to them because I think it betrays malt whiskey. Can we dwell on that for a second, since we're talking about Johnnie Walker blends and all the rest of it and things? One of the things that we have to remember is malt whiskey just doesn't want to play the game. If you want to make something that's consistently the same every time, so that when you finish a bottle and replace it, you're going to get the exact same experience, you should probably be considering doing that through blending. Now, single malts, surprise, surprise, are often blended. Not blended with other malts, it's a single product from a single place. But if you've got a massive distillery such as Glenfiddich, then you have enough deep stocks to have a decent chance of making a consistent product every time. But if you're a much smaller distillery, there's no way that you can make things absolutely consistent every time, because malt whiskey does not want to play the consistency game. It really doesn't, and that's okay. It's made from exclusively in one place from barley, water, yeast, nothing else added. It's a very, very natural product. Once it's made, we put it into a natural cask that's every bit as volatile as the spirit itself, arguably more so that wooden cask, that oak that it goes into. So you've really got a hard job to blend all those casks together once it's mature in order to make something that's the same every time. Some blenders achieve it more than others, but it tends to be because they're drawing from much deeper stocks and their jobs are made much more possible. Doesn't that sound like something that's exactly what blends are about? You have to go back 200 years into grocers where whiskey became a branded product in the first place. And if you walked into the original John Walker store in Kilmarnock, you would have been presented with whiskey. And over time, instead of that whiskey being a different barrel from a different distillery with a different taste every single time, they would have developed a way to blend and mix their own whiskies, much the same as they were doing with tea, as an example. They would have been able to blend that and put the Johnnie Walker name on it to say that this is a much more consistent thing. It's going to taste the same as the time that you last had your flagon filled here, and we go forward and you know that you can come here and buy this whiskey reliably every time. That just makes sense, and that fits that market and that model and that demand, absolutely. But malt whiskey, that's exactly why the blends exist in the first place, because malt whiskey is fickle and variable and wonderfully challenging. So if you're after a varying experience every time, you're going to be drawn to malt whiskey. And all the other benefits, such as that wonderful texture, that lovely long finish, the stuff that malt, that barley is very, very good at bringing into the spirit, is going to be something that you can enjoy. I'm not going to do anything with the Speyburn. I'm not going to sit here and sip it in front of you. Just trust me, and please, I encourage you, if you can get your hands on the travel retail one, it'll be very easy for you to also pick up a 40% bottle as well, and you can try them side by side, and you can see for yourself the difference. You can taste for yourself the difference. You can feel the difference. And when you want to go back and have a second glass of one of the whiskies, I guarantee it's going to be the 46% bottle. But I want to get on to the next thing. Falscraft is saying, and yet even Compass Box stops producing very successful blends because the available casks change. Exactly, Klaus. So there will always be change. And I think if you're in it for flavour, buddy, it's nice to have their favourites and things that we can seek forevermore. But I think that if you're into malt whiskey today in 2026 and loving it, one of the appeals of the scene is how wonderfully diverse the flavours are. Matt Bishop is saying, he's talking to Whisky Novice and he's saying, I loved your Ralph impersonation. Whisky Novice must be in here. I hope he is. Good to see you, Jim. If you are, buddy, Happy New Year to you. Sugar Kitty is saying, fickle, variable, and wonderful. That pretty well describes us barflies. That's right, Jeff. I agree. Fickle, yeah. Spontaneous. Let's go with spontaneous. Very varied, absolutely. And absolutely wonderful. Just like yourself, Jeff. The next thing I'm going to get into the glass is I'm going to pour a wee Lowlander. I'm going to pour a wee Lochlea. This is their batch 1 cask strength. So this has been on the shelf, I think, at least a year, maybe 2 years, actually. It's just one of the many Lochleas. I quite like Lochleas. The bottle size is really short, so the space that I've got left, there's only 1 or 2 bottles in the collection that will fit, and Lochlea is one of them. So it sits down there in the bottom. But I've not replaced this. I've not bought many other newer Lochleas. And I'll be honest with you, the reason for that. I have a lot of Lochleas down there, and until I clear some Lochlea space, I need a reason to go out and buy another Lochlea. I've shared this over the time I've had it. You can see that. There's a wee yellow dot in the back, so maybe some of you guys will know if I've used it in a vPub for a blind tasting, but that usually denotes a bottle that I've used for a blind tasting. But I remember this being ridiculously rich, quite dense, and lots of oak-driven flavour and notes and aromas. And I'm getting that, but actually nosing it tonight I'm actually getting much more malt than I remember. So when I talk about malt, I'm talking about cereal notes. I'm talking about, you might get it from a plate of porridge. You might get it from a malt drink. Like we used to have a thing in the UK called Horlicks. I don't know what you would call it where you are, but it was a kind of hot drink. They used to encourage people sipping it at bedtime and things. But you're talking about the cereal notes. And if you've ever wondered what that's like, if you just take a distillery tour, you can almost breathe that in as you walk around the distillery. But certainly you can pick it up alongside a lot of the fruit and new make. This is quite a young whiskey. There wasn't an age statement on this, but I believe from memory it was reported to be in the 5-year ballpark. These days, people are confident putting a 5-year age statement on new whiskies. It's not a problem for anyone. I would encourage them to do that. A bit more transparency, more on that a bit later. The cask strength makes itself very, 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 very known. It almost leads with it. You're instantly kind of wanting, especially on the back of that Speyburn, you're wanting to see how things are drawn back into line with a little bit of water. And I think that's one of the great things about cask strength. And one of the things that brings a bit of value there too is that you can add your own water at home to your taste, rather than how someone else has designed the whiskey to be to their taste or to their profit goals or whatever it may be. This is 60% ABV, 60.1 in fact, full cask strength. So now with a wee bit of water in it, maybe it was there before, but I'll say I've added a wee bit of water. I'm getting some quite nice orchard, and there's a richer fruit in there as well, maybe like a dried fig, a little bit of marzipan, a little bit of birthday cake type icing and marzipan. A wee bit of fudgy element too. But the overriding first foot, if you were to use one word to describe this whiskey, it's quite loud, it's quite, maybe vibrant would be a good word. But I think we know, it does very, very well with a wee bit of water in it. That's much more, the flavours are much more accessible. It's rounded out a bit. That fudgy thing is now, you can taste a bit of fudge on there, a wee bit of treacle even. That fig thing comes forward. It's so much easier to express and articulate flavours in that glass rather than the quite quiet and muted Speyburn I was having earlier, which is fine. It's completely understandable, and that's what it's designed to be. But as I sip this, I want to consider the next thing I would like you guys to maybe think about as well, because where we stand in these supposed mass market doldrums, I think there's an argument of saturation right now. And I think that part of the reason for saturation is because there are arguably, and I will find a way to put a positive spin on this, there are arguably too many brands. There is too much choice. Can that be right? Can I really be complaining about too many brands and too much choice in 2026? Well, let's see. How do you guys feel about that? How are you feeling about the choice that we have? Don't tell me to think, says Jimmy Legg. In that case, carry on, Jimmy. There is a month late. This is a month late, says Tim, but let's raise a glass to lost friends. Last year, Andy Foodquig, and 2 years ago, Alan Whisky Straight Al. Rest in peace, you wonderful men. That's a great sentiment. I'll actually raise a glass to that. I have spent a wee bit of time when we heard that Alan had passed, and also Andy. I never met Alan in real life, but I got to spend a wee bit of time with Andy. Aye. To anyone who's lost anyone, and to our lost friends. Cheers, Tim. And as we've said, here's to your health too. Gordon Burniston is here. January is the perfect month to put a dent in the Lochlea aquavitae in honour of the bold Robert Burns having resided at the farm, of course. Oh, thou my muse. Good old Scotch drink. That's right. So, and I think, where am I on Burns night? I think it doesn't land on a Thursday this year. I think it lands on the weekend, if I'm right. Can't remember. But I'm over at Friends. I wonder what nonsense we'll get up to. It's kind of funny how we all get teary-eyed over. I mean, I really don't know much Burns at all. I've got friends out there that would shout at me for. But it's funny how much we enjoy it in the January window. Yuri is here, Simply About Whiskey, saying, have you heard that 23rd of January 26 will be released the oldest so far Lochlea expression, a 7-year-old 50% ABV, matured in a vatting of 7 first fill bourbon casks. Time flies. That's good information. That's why I love the community as well. You get that feedback. A 7-year-old coming out at the end of January. It looks like it's coming out to celebrate Burns, of course, but there's no, they won't be making a mistake with that time of the year to bring it out and celebrate all of that. That's fantastic. That's the type of thing that we should be looking forward to, and it's probably a limited release. However, when we're talking about too many brands and too much choice, the reason I brought a Lochlea up to share with you for this is one of the reasons I'm not buying another Lochlea right now is I've just bought too many of them. And there's an argument that I should be buying lots of Lochleas because I should be able to be in a position to understand how it's maturing, how it's growing and shaping as it goes forward. So the new core range that's come out, the dark briar, our barley, these are the ones that I should be absolutely up to date with and up to speed with. So I'm feeling it. I'm feeling a pressure on my shoulders to at least have a bottle of those and let you know how they're getting along. Our barley I have here has been here for quite a while. The dark briar I have never tried, and there's another one that escapes my mind right now. But they've got this new core range, and I think they had to do that. They had to rationalise their core range, because the seasonal releases, as they were maturing, despite the fact there was huge definition across the range, but we had fallow, we had, I can't remember, there was fallow, there was sowing, there was another 4 reflecting the agricultural season. So there was 4 releases coming out in their seasonal releases. They had our barley, they had the cask strength, and then they had the special editions coming out as well. Any retailer you went into that stocked Lochlea, it was almost a wee bit overwhelming. There was almost just a wee bit too much. And it was kind of like they got the concept absolutely right, but potentially released a wee bit too much of all of it. I don't know. Depends completely on where you are. I'm seeing this right across the board right now, and it doesn't matter whether you're a big, well-established legacy brand or whether you're one of the newer brands, if you're a bit more independent. The temptation is, when things slow down a little bit, let's release a new product. Let's release a new product. Let's add another product. Let's add another product. And it just gets to the point where it's not just a problem of retail space, shelves on the stores. It becomes difficult to manage as an online product. And it certainly becomes difficult to manage at home if you're of the type to be collecting certain brands, certain distilleries. Even for a whiskey geek like me, who feels the pressure of trying to keep up and buying as much as I can in order to keep my voice and opinion on whiskey relevant, I start to become saturated. It's not fair that I've picked up Lochlea. There's half a dozen more others that are at fault. And I don't just mean new distilleries that are tempted to bring out new whiskies all the time. I'm going to make an exception and make a bit of a demonstrative point on this a wee bit later with a new distillery who I think is getting it very, very close to spot on. A good blueprint to follow for anyone. But we're also talking about the Tomatins of the world and the Tom and Towels of this world and lots of other legacy brands where there's just so much. Glencadam is one of the another Angus Dundee. Sorry to mention 2 Angus Dundee brands. Glencadam is a wonderful, wonderful whiskey, and I think the pinnacle for me would be their 10-year-old. I don't mean the pinnacle as in the absolute best, but the easiest to recommend, most affordable, most readily available. Glencadam 10 is a wonderful, wonderful wee elegant whiskey, full of fruit. But if you were to go into a Glencadam space in the retail sector, regardless of whether you're at travel retail, if you're a specialist retailer, if you just look online or even at their own website, there's just so many different coloured labels. So much of it is finishing, so much of it is a different take on the same theme. It's just all a bit, it becomes muddy. It's almost like you've taken all of the colours of Play-Doh and mixed it together and you just get shit brown, because you don't have the definition anymore. You don't have the understanding. You don't have, and you start to lose a bit of appeal, because one of the things that makes us love a product is an ability to understand it. And when there's too much choice, it's easier and easier and easier to detach. I'm not suggesting it's a prediction that there's going to be rationalization. I'm fully of the opinion that it's an absolute necessity that we have to see less choice. Now, that's going to be very difficult, because if they see a peak every time they release a new product, and there's a peak and there's a peak, but it just adds to the problem and it just kicks the can a little bit down the road. I've got some suggestions of my own, but bear in mind I'm coming at this from a position of not really knowing anything about actually making and selling whiskey. I'm all about buying and consuming it. The Nick Poor is saying, Play-Doh shit brown, my favourite. Good to see you in, buddy. I hope you're keeping well. Tim is saying, I hope all these young distilleries are able to save some stock so that when they are 10 years old, they have casks to start releasing bottles with numbers on the bottle. Aquaviti. Well, Ardnamurchan was one of the great ones, if you'll remember, that they were nervous when they hit their 10 years old, that they were worried about just how little stock that they had, not just to release a 10-year-old, but to have enough to release, I don't know, I'm guessing, a 15, an 18, a 21, a whatever it may be, and eventually to have some really, really quite decades old product down the line as well. So it's a very, very difficult balancing act, even when you're making, 250, 300,000, 400,000 litres a year, such as Ardnamurchan. So it's definitely a dynamic. Again, the temptation can be to sell it all early, like Kilchoman was often guilty of being forced to do, I suppose, at certain points in time. Glencadam 10 and 15, says Tim, are wonderful and basic in a good way. I ignore all the finished bottles they seem to spew out. It's interesting that you feel the same, Alistair is saying, but the Glencadam finishes are all easily affordable, 46% natural colour aquavitae, especially the PX, which is a regular purchase. Listen, I don't want to pick on any specific brand, but you take all of that range of Glencadams and add it to all the Tomatins, the Tomintills, if you add it to all the Highland Parks, if you add it to all the Lochleas, if you add it to all the... It's not all the producers all of the time, but we do get to the point of it's great to have the choice, but it's nice when there are so many producers out there today. You know, we're at 150 plus Scotch malt distilleries in 2026. And they're not all making one brand. Many of them are making multiple brands, of course. It does become difficult and almost intimidating. And I think the focus should be for any producer going forward is to work out how they can make their product accessible, not just for us as seasoned whiskey botherers, but for all the kind of new whiskey folk that are thinking of stepping into the space or have just recently stepped into the space as well. You want to keep it so that this is your range, this is your thing. And then you can augment that with batch releases and annual releases. More on that in a little bit. I'm very much enjoying that Lochlea after a wee spot of water in it. I'm going to pour wee tiny amounts because I want to get on to the next thing. You might recognize this colour. It's very difficult to disguise it, but I want to make a little bit of a prediction for 2026, and I think that that's an inevitability more than anything else. Ages are on the up. Already mentioned how recently, it wasn't recently actually, it was 2024, that Glenmorangie went from a 10-year-old to a 12-year-old. We've seen that happen across other products in the core lineup from Glenmorangie as well. But not just a case of ages increasing. We've actually seen that, I hope I've picked up the right bottle here, I have. We've actually seen that we can have age statements reappearing, because this is classic laddie at 10 years old. Now, this has appeared on the vPub before, but I have to tell you, this is a dreamy, dreamy, dreamy little whiskey. This is often available for a really, really good price. I think it's sold a wee bit too cheap under certain offers. I've seen it down in the 30s. This is 50% ABV, fully natural, fully traceable whiskey. It's very, very well made. I think that any reservations anyone has had over Bruichladdich in the past, surely those reservations can be banished now that we have this product. I have to say, I sipped it live against its non-age statement, what it replaced, and I've gone back and forward a few times, and there's an edge of a difference here, but it's so negligible that it's difficult, and I can catch myself out trying to do it blind of occasion, but this is a better product. But when I say it's a better product, this Bruichladdich Classic Laddie is better today than it's ever been. This has never been this bloody good. They are making the best whiskey they've ever made right now. Sorry, I'm sure that they're making the best whiskey they've ever made right now. They're releasing the best whiskey they've ever released right now. I was so close to making Bruichladdich 18 my whiskey of the year in 2024, despite the fact it was £150 a bottle. That is a measure of how good I felt that whiskey was. Cheers, everyone. Wow. Okay, this is helping. I've just come from a cask strength whiskey into this, so the 50% ABV is not intimidating at all to my palate. There's a real sense of this is a different product. There's a flavour of that Bruichladdich, kind of almost like salinity, maybe, ever so slightly. It's kind of bright, coastal, but also orchard fruit. But it's bolstered by this, and this is what we have today, is this kind of deep intensity that comes from a creaminess almost like it's coming. It's like they've kept that creaminess that you can get from new make spirit, that lovely kind of creamy, thick texture. But all the kind of harshness has been taken away. The raw side of things has been taken away, and it's been matured out. So it comes across almost buttery. If you can imagine like some kind of sharp fruit-infused butter. Again, I hear myself. I hear the language I'm using to describe a drink. But you're here because you know. My Brook Laddie reservations have all been cancelled, Aquaviti. I've never had the Laddie 10, but I've tried the H, which I loved, says the neck pour. That was Jimmy Legg. It was talking about cancelling his reservations, by the way. Pedro is saying, it really looks like the transition to the 10-year-old classic Laddie was planned well ahead, Aquaviti. I wonder. I hope that it was. But they've also got themselves to a place where they can allocate that amount of stock for it today. Ginger Genius, good to see you. Johnny saying the classic Laddie, always on the perma shelf. I think it's probably like to be even more so now with a 10-year minimum age statement on there as well and at the same price, John. It's been a very, very muted release. It's interesting, the strategy there that they've put it out there quite quietly, because I imagine, you know, the bottles look absolutely identical, apart from this one has that wee statement on the side there that says 10 years. But, you know, you could actually mix these on the shelf and people would pick one or the other up if they didn't pay any attention. They wouldn't really know a difference. And I think that that's actually quite a clever way to do it, because the whiskey's not that different anyway. But also, if they made a fuss about, wow, we've brought back a 10-year-old, you know, there's a lot of whiskey out there in the supply chain that would suddenly become a little bit sludgy, I think, harder to sell. So the fact that they've done it a bit quieter makes a bit of sense. And I would say that if you have the non-age statement where you are, and it's a fair price, it's normal price, a discounted price, don't feel you have to wait for the 10-year-old. Pick it up. Because, like I say, the difference between the two is so tiny, so tiny. I was already raving about the non-age statement classic Laddie before this was ramped up to a 10-year-old, but it's easier to talk about it now. Also, look at this. Ardnamurchan, 10-year-old. Now, up there, I've got another 10-year-old from the year before, from 2024, when Ardnamurchan first had stock available to make a 10-year-old. And they promised us, look, it's a special release, it's to celebrate 10 years, yada, yada, this. And next thing you know, the next year comes along, well, actually, we've got a wee bit more stock and we're going to bring out another 10-year-old. But they didn't want to promise something that they maybe couldn't or didn't want to suddenly deliver. And it wasn't until last year that they announced there was going to be another 10-year-old. So that's this one that I've just showed up to you. The original one was a kind of cream label. So what we've got from Ardnamurchan there is an interesting strategy, isn't it? Because they're going to be bringing out their 10-year-old potentially as an annual product. It's not the type of thing that you can go in and be guaranteed to buy all of the time, every time. It's potentially not going to languish on shelves forever. What is going to be constantly available on shelves is the wonderful staple that they have. Apologies, this is a really old Ardnamurchan. This is actually the first ever. This was their inaugural 09/20/01. Their first ever release, September 2020. I remember those dark days of the pandemic. This is batch one. So they've upped their branding ever so slightly, but it looks remarkably similar to this. And they've ditched the 09/20 codes and they've just called it AD, but there is still a batch number. And obviously that QR code on the back that we can scan and discover everything that we want to find out about any Ardnamurchan bottling, which is wonderful. So I think that's a strategy just to put in the back of our minds right now and consider going forward as I talk about the other things tonight. We've got a core range product. And then we've got annual releases that can come out as well. I think this is an interesting strategy. However, I do believe that we will see the age statements becoming more embraced and higher age statements too. The only age statement I've seen on an Ardnamurchan product to date We can scan the QR code and find out what the age of everything is, of course. But the only one that carried an age statement has been their 10-year-old product to date. Now, as they get older and as they start to release older products, I think they're going to start to talk about age a wee bit more. It's an inevitability. The temptation is just too strong to celebrate the fact that Ardnamurchan is no longer a young distillery. So when we talk about a core range anchor, I think that's potentially going to be a very, very good strategy for anyone going forward. So rather than Lochlea having 3 or 5 or more of a core range, maybe having a core range solid thing that they can keep on the shelves all the year round, that just ticks along, and then potentially have an Ardnamurchan style model where they come along with a Sauterne, a sherry cask, a new 2026 release of the cask strength, a new 2026 release of the Paul Lanois, a new 2026 release of the Golden Promise, or heritage grain of a different variety, whatever it may be. Because they're managing to do two things there. They're managing to bring out a new product that causes a bit of excitement and a bit of desire in the people that like that style of whiskey and like Ardnamurchan. But it also means that they are almost keeping that consistent product that people immediately connect with. They don't need to learn what it is every time. They recognize it because the thing itself has been out in a previous year, or because it's a very, very understandable release based on other similar releases that's come out from that distillery. They're not reinventing the wheel every time. I think it's clever. Now, there's more Ardnamurchan on the shelves today than there has ever been, but we always hoped that that would be the case. We can't complain that we can't buy Ardnamurchan and then draw attention to the fact that we can always buy Ardnamurchan. I mean, it's crazy, right? It's a good thing that Ardnamurchan is landing on the shelves and staying around longer than it has in the past. We can suddenly buy it. We can take our time. We don't need to get involved in a scrum or waiting, hitting the F5 on a keyboard to try and get these bottles anymore. Okay, it remains a problem with Paul Lanois and certain releases from them. But generally speaking, these whiskies are hanging around for longer, and that's a very deliberate thing. Helen Williamson is in. Good to see Helen. Bed is calling. So great to be back with you and all the lovely whiskey folk. Roy, have a great weekend and catch you next week. Helen, it's nice. It's brilliant to have you in Glasgow as well. I hope you're both doing okay. It'd be nice to see you and welcome you back again in Glasgow this year. And Andy and Hells are in, saying, evening and happy new year. Could we wish a happy birthday to two barflies, Jerry Miller and Jason Bradford? That's amazing. There's a couple of names that's been around for a long, long time. Jerry Miller, I can't imagine how long you've been around. Same for Jason Bradford as well. I'll raise this wee glass. I'll raise this wee sip of 10-year-old Brookladdy to wish my pal Jerry Miller and my pal Jason Bradford both many happy returns. Happy birthday, boys. Cheers. Thanks, Andy. Thanks for looking out for them. And thanks for looking out for me so I could raise a wee glass to them as well. Everyone is saying, you could make a good argument why Waterford went bankrupt is that they didn't have an anchor. They had a concept as an anchor, but the cuvées came out too late. And by that time, the blue bottles were not a strange sight on the shelves anymore. We were already drowned by too much variation and not enough understanding. I don't know if that was what caused the downfall of Waterford. I have no insight there whatsoever, but I can tell you exactly why it was easy for me to not fully engage with Waterford. Jimmy Legg is saying, yep, every time I have a Kilkerran, it confirms that Glengyle is the best distillery in the world, Aquaviti. It seems like such a simple setup. How do they do it? Kilkerran have a core range 12-year-old that's more or less available most of the time. And then they have the peat releases that keep coming, the heavily peated Kilkerran. They have annual releases of things like the 16-year-old. There's talk of there being an even older product coming out of Kilkerran soon as well. They have the cask strength releases. Again, these are understandable, identifiable, transient releases that inject a lot of desire. We know they're not going to be around forever. They're here for a few days, a few weeks, or whatever it may be. And then one day in the future, they'll be gone. And when they're gone, we don't need to wait too long until that fun comes back again and we can enjoy another release from Glengyle. I have to say, Jimmy, you make a great point there, because I could have held up Glengyle Coquerin as a perfect model for most of a rational, reasonable way out of a lot of the dynamics I'm going to be talking about tonight. But that core range anchor is critical, whether it's your Bruichladdich 10, whether it's your Ardnamurchan AD, or whether it's your Coquerin 12-year-old. I think that having a singular product that people connect with, I think, is a very, very good strategy. It's that safe flagstone to stand on, isn't it, before you consider stepping left, right, backwards or forwards with various other expressions from the same brand. Class is saying, I absolutely loved Waterford. I am exactly that kind of geek, but I was wondering how this effort was economically sustainable, and my wonderment was right. I've got 1 or 2 bottles of Waterford down there that I can absolutely appreciate as very, very high quality, fantastic distillate. In fact, you've probably heard me argue on vPubs in the past that Waterford were making one of the best Scotch whiskies outside of Scotland. It was very tongue-in-cheek what I meant there, but there was a purity to it, and there was a real excitement for the future. And, you know, that still stands because the whiskey still exists and it's still maturing. But when it's going to come out in what shape or what format, we really don't know. The people that started the whole concept are not going to be the people that execute that finally in the end. We just don't know what's going to happen. I was hearing some gossip and chatter last year, but it was gossip for the most part, so I'm not going to tell tales out of school in a vPub, but it's going to be interesting to see what the long-term plan is with that whiskey. Sadly, Waterford pushed the subtle difference in barley, but used a confusing combination of strong casks. So how could you tell the difference? Well, they were very light. I felt they tended to be quite light with the cask choice. In fact, it was often a criticism to the team and Mark Rainey himself that when he was talking about Waterford, he didn't spend enough time talking about the cask maturation side of things. Whisky Weekend Drama is saying the work in progress versions were great, a great way to market Coquerin. Yeah, I remember that not being in particularly high demand. Even from me, it was probably a time in whiskey where I was far too anchored to Isla and PT whiskies. And I remember the Coquerin work in progress releases dropping from time to time. But I wasn't fully invested in it at that point. If I went back today to that point, I would be all over it, I think. Rick Johnson is saying, tell Roy. Tell the stories, tell the gossip. I tell you what I will do. I'll get something else in the glass. And I want to remain focused on this concept of batch-focused releases. So we start with our anchor, your Coquerin 12, as I say, your Bruichladdich 10, your Ardnamurchan AD, whatever it may be. In the case of Lochlea, I would imagine that being our barley, because I think that needs to be what Lochlea pushes. The fact that they are literally taking barley from the neighbouring fields and making it into whiskey on that farm, I think it's not... When you think about it, all they need is a bottling plant on site and some maltings, which are both very, very difficult things to do. But then you've got a fully, whether it's, barley to bottle, grain to glass, single estate. It doesn't matter what you talk about there, but they've got the ability to do that along the lines of Daft Mill, but they don't malt, Springbank, but they don't grow their own barley all the time, although that's potentially changing in for certain projects. There's Jackton, of course, that's doing a fantastic job. I'm looking forward to see what comes out of Jackton at some point in the future. There's all of these kind of single estate projects going. But you've got that core product. You've got something that we can connect to and grow an appreciation for your brand through the core product. And then you can give us some alternatives that appear in a more transient way in order for you to draw us in. And I'm going to open one that's been around for a long time. And you'll forgive me if I dwell and talk a lot about this brand tonight. I've used them as the model for a lot of the examples that I'm going to make. A lot of the examples for a lot of the points I'm going to make. This is an Ardnamurchan. I've tried this. I know what this tastes like, or I have a vague memory of what this tastes like. But this bright yellow label will tell you this is their Sauterne release. But this dark band through it that kind of mimics that kind of forward slash of Ardnamurchan's branding, that tells you that this is the peated example of the Sauterne from Ardnamurchan. Now, I'm not a wine cask finish guy. It tends to be, I know we're talking about various different styles of wine. Wines are very, very different. Arguably, wines are even much more different than whiskies, absolutely. But Sauterne, for me, works. I enjoyed Ardnamurchan Sauterne, and I tend to enjoy the Arran Sauterne and various other whiskies that are matured in this style of wine cask. So this is a perfect example of it. Oh, I've forgotten it was a peaty whiskey. I was looking for all the kind of fruit and things. I just stuck my nose in, not really paying attention, and I guess you got a big blast of peat smoke. Earthy, moist, mulchy peat smoke, damp fire. It's almost like somebody's had a wee bit of an outdoor fire and they've just taken a big wheelbarrow full of wet leaves and dumped it on the fire, and you kind of get that smoke coming up. Sometimes I smell warm smoke and cold smoke, and I can immediately tell whether it's a cool smoke or a warm smoke. I think this could be almost either. There's a lovely kind of sweet note coming through as well, a slightly softly spiced sweet note like Madeira cake, like sponge cake, like trifle sponge booze soaked cake. Does that make sense? Light fruit. It's very easy to talk about grapes, white grapes, sweet white grapes. It's a nutty edge. The smoke's subsiding a bit. I'm getting behind it now. Cheers, everyone. I should have opened this at Christmas. I'm very glad to open it with you now. Salty. Didn't get the salty on the nose. It's very salty on the palate. So you've got all that kind of sweet, soft spice coming in as well. It's a kind of tobacco edge to things now, but on the palate you get that Ardnamurchan coastal salinity, and it's bolstered by the smoke on this one. It's made a wee bit more obvious on this with the smoke on this. It's leaning a wee bit to kind of a cool smoke, suddenly taking me outdoors. Lots of sweetness. Good weight, good body, robust. It's almost taken some of that kind of heft of that Bruichladdich that I was enjoying, but it's just taken us outdoors. It's taken us away from our plate of fruit and porridge at breakfast, and it's taken us out into the outdoors as if we're walking along with a kind of some kind of quite dense, sweet fruit side of things. The finish is the tobacco, almost like a menthol edge. Okay, so what am I talking about here? Why is this being put forward? Why am I talking about this? Because we've got our AD core range. We can understand that it's their core Ardnamurchan DNA. And then they've got their sherry cask release. They've got their cask strength release. They've got the Sauterne, the Paul and Noir. They've got countless others. The Heritage Barley came out last year. The 10-year-old's coming out as well. You could look at Ardnamurchan, you could say, this is confusing. You've got so many, and yet I am not confused by Ardnamurchan at all. And I wonder if it's because they move from that anchor product, that core range product, and then they've got these transient releases that they come out, they bring out each time, and they're never going to repeat. Because if 2026 brings another sherry cask, another Sauterne, we know it's not going to be the same. We're going to talk to each other and oh, you enjoyed the 2024 release. Well, that was unpeated. The 2025 was peated, and this one's a mixable, or whatever it's going to be for the new one. We know that it's going to be a new product that's not that new. It's a different thing, but it's not that different or difficult to understand. We know it's going to be here today and gone tomorrow because that is malt whiskey. And the demands to make something consistent out of that product, I think, can strip away some of the character and the purity and the individual enjoyment. The whiskey should be allowed to be as good as it can possibly be from the casks that it comes out of. To try and crowbar it into the exact same product time and time and time again is arguably, depending on how much of a geek you are, like me, is arguably abusing it a little. So you take the product that can give you your anchor time and time and time again, give you that kind of solidity, that consistency, that thing for people to connect with, and then all these other casks that you have, all these other projects, all these other ideas, they are individual things. I don't think that's a difficult concept for people to understand, whether you're a whiskey geek like us or whether you're somebody that's coming in and a bit more new to everything. Ardnamurchan needs a core range bottle that is unpeated. Unpeated Ardna is too rare. That's an interesting feedback because we know that the core range is a mix of peated and unpeated. But what I would say about Ardnamurchan, there are so many releases that come out from them that is fully unpeated. The Heritage Grain release that came out, the Sauterne in 2024, they are regularly bringing out unpeated product. Ardna's evolving, says Gene Kelly. Let's enjoy the ride, and we can be here blow by blow when we want to, when we can afford it, when it appeals to us. We can connect with Ardnamurchan and taste how it's changing over the years. Andy Hells is saying, first vPub of the year deserves a good dram. Aquavita's virtual malt. It just keeps improving. Each glass, fabulous Aquavita. I predict lots of time shared with fabulous barflies in 2026. I was very delinquent. I didn't check to see. I think it's still in stock. I didn't see how many are still in stock. It may not be in stock. I should have checked. I'm confident it's still in stock. We're down to the last few bottles as we come into January. For me, I've only got 2 full bottles over my shoulder here, but somewhere on the shelves, in fact, I know where it is, it's not even in this room, there's a bottle of virtual malt with only about that much left in the bottom, and it's my second bottle. I'm sharing it heavily, but I lent on it, Andy, as you have over Christmas, very, very heavily. I was excited to share it with everyone, and my vicarious enjoyment of that bottle with everyone that got to try it, it was wonderful. Red Mordecai is saying, Ben Riak, under Billy Walker used to be like this. Every batch of 16-year-old was different, no consistency, but loved it. And if you say that, if you state that that is the case, and if you make it clear, and I think this is critical if we talk about batch-focused releases, I think it's absolutely critical that you make it clear what the batch is. As much as I love Springbank, we're left with magnifying glasses on the core range bottlings to see what the date is that's been jetted. Is there any way we can just kind of print that a bit easier on the label somehow? Tell us 2025 release, early 2025 release, late 2025, whatever it may be. With a Springbank 12-year-old cask strength, completely batch from ground up. It is sold as a batch product, right? But it doesn't say the batch anywhere. We just have to go by the ABV, match the ABV to the year that came out, or we're back out with the magnifying glass again to look at the thing. I think it wouldn't take much for Springbank just to go that step further and make it a bit clearer what the batch releases are. That helps whiskey. Why? Because it helps hammer this concept home that whiskey is going to be different. The reason that we're calling it a batch release product and giving it a name is because we want to let people understand that we will let the whiskey be as good as it can be each batch rather than try to match the previous batch. That is one of the biggest difference between mass market and the whiskey that we chase and love. It is also the type of model that encourages accumulation of 2 bottles of the exact same product because we love to get our geek on and compare side by side. And we're not going to do that by buying one bottle of Glenlivet 12 from Morrison's supermarket and another from Safeway or Sainsbury's or wherever else and comparing the two. It's just not going to happen. But if we've got 2 different batches of the same product, that's fun. Helps us understand the commonalities, the core DNA, the distillery characteristic, if we can access it, but also lets us understand, okay, this has got a bit more mature whiskey in the mix. This has got a bit more peated whiskey in the mix. This has got a bit more wine cask in the mix, or whatever it may be. Again, I'll hold Ardnamurchan up as the example because of that QR code. You scan the QR code and you can find out as much as you want to find out. They beat you over the head with transparency. It's not the last time I'm going to use Ardnamurchan as an example. And, you know, people ask me, they talk about being a fanboy and all of these types of things. Listen, next week on the vPub, you'll hear me fanboying about a different brand, and a week after different. It's not about being a fanboy. We need to stop this silly, silly language. It's about holding things up and saying, this is done well. It's not difficult for other people to do similar things. This is succeeding. Let me explain why it's succeeding. We're hearing about mothballing. We're hearing about throttling back on capacity. We're hearing about shifts being cancelled, jobs being lost. Everywhere from Glenglassaugh up in the northeastern Highlands all the way down to Auchentoshan and the lowlands, there's quiet decisions are being made to just quietly shut things down, power things off. It's happening everywhere. It's not just happening in Scotch whisky, it's happening globally. While all that's going on, Ardnamurchan are actively recruiting to bolster their team. The scales are nowhere comparable. It's completely different. But it's another example of when I hear about these conversations about whiskey doldrums, we need to stop hearing about people and companies that are in trouble and hearing it and saying, oh, whiskey's that. We need to look at it from our perspective. Oh, wait a minute, I'm not in the doldrums. I still love whiskey. All my pals are still here. When I go to the club night, they're still there. When I go to the festivals, they're still there. When I go into the shop, the people in the shop are still there. And the people I bump into in the shop are still the same people. And it's great and it's vibrant and it's still very, very alive. Yeah, we're not growing our YouTube channels anymore, but they're still strong. There's still a demand for them. A lot of YouTube channels out there, if they disappeared, I think we would miss them. This is not the doldrums. This is just whiskey. And I think there's good ways to do whiskey, and there's clumsy ways to do whiskey. There's medium to long-term plans that you can put in place, and there's short-term plans. And there's silly things to do, and there's clever things to do. And sometimes it's not obvious, but it's never a bad thing to look at where things are being done successfully and at least take a wee bit of inspiration. Rick is saying, I'm a fanboy of your lovely polo shirt, Roy. I know, buddy. Do you know, I think one day I'll just go out and just make you an exclusive polo shirt just for you. Rick has been on at me for a long, long time. I came up with an idea recently that maybe at one of the events or something like that, far in advance, I'll get a bunch of shirts made and I'll maybe ask my daughters along or something like that to just put up a table and sell them at the event. And then we don't need to worry about all the nonsense I get trying to export from the UK. And all the costs involved and how it makes it not very attractive. I don't want to overcharge for things. I want you to pay the right price for a polo shirt. These are good polo shirts. They last a long time. These were made in 2019 and still going strong. But so you might be able to just buy them there in the place. And maybe if you know you're coming and somebody's not traveling, but they say to you, hey, can you bring me back a polo shirt or something like that? We can use the Mule network to get the distribution done on them. And that might be a nice way around it. No promises, but Rick, I'll work out a solution for you at some point in the future. A positive prediction for 2026, says Callum. Good to see you, Callum. I managed to shake your hand today and say Happy New Year to you, buddy. It's nice to see you in here. Witchburn will be the first brand new Campbelltown distillery for 147 years to produce spirit since Ardlussa in 1879. Wow. Glengyle was a reopening. Of course it was. And the other brands that we know, Longrow and Hazelburn, these are reinvented brands of distilleries that used to exist. Springbank's been around for a long time. Glengyle, as you say, has been around for a long time. It's a reopening. Glen Scotia has also been, 1832 for Glen Scotia and 1828 for Springbank. So that is something. So do we know now that which one is going to be it? Now, Callum Renton, we might know him as, he's often tagged as Glen Scotia. I think that's you, Callum. So we know that you are firmly a fan of the Peninsula. Falsgraph is saying, I think it's not just the scales that are different. I think it's also the profit margins that are different. There is profit, this pays, but not in the millions, just in the hundreds. Yeah, but I think that is to do with scale, because the margins that the mass market is working at is razor thin. And it's also driven by, this is interesting, it's driven by not the consumer. If you go to global travel retail, it's the people that run global travel retail that will sit in the negotiating table and decide what the price is going to be. And it's the same for the multiples. The buying power of these companies is so huge that they are the ones that determine what the price is going to be, not often the producer. And the producer is kind of bent into shape and forced to do things in a way that is not loyal to the whiskey. Hence why Springbank famously in the 1990s just decided, nope, we're not doing this anymore. And look at where they are today. Bob Sander is saying batch variation is a positive and the polar opposite to homogenized, dare I say, boring whiskey, and keeps us geeks happy. Yes, Bob, you're spot on, but I would go one further and say I don't think it's just the geeks. I think so many times I've poured a really, really highly flavored, densely flavored, robust, bold whiskey in front of somebody who's supposedly not very good with neat spirits, and the flavor has completely had their eyes popping. This is 50% ABV. I'm saying that out loud. I should check first. I believe it to be 50% ABV. Yes, it is. Same as that Bruichladdich that I enjoyed a wee minute ago, the creamy, buttery Bruichladdich. Now, I don't doubt for a second that 50% ABV might be a touch challenging for somebody just coming in to neat spirits, but you give them a wee teaspoon of water and you encourage them to use that and focus not on drinking, but more on the contemplation, slowing down, taking their time. Cheers, Bob. Which is a perfect segue into my last mini bumper stop for tonight. And that is, I predict, I'm going to make one more prediction after this, but it's very tongue-in-cheek. This is a legitimate one. I predict that not only are we going to see this, but I think it's a good thing to have more cask strength available. What do I mean by cask strength? I'm not talking about more SMWS releases. I'm not talking about more. Look at the success of probably the perfect example of, and it can only exist because of the resources available, but the 100 proof series from Signatory Vintage. That's all about the value proposition there, but we engage with it and we realize that it's all fantastic whiskey too. It's up and down, batch by batch, expression by expression. You're going to like one more than me, and I'm going to be looking for more bourbon cask releases and all of this kind of thing. But you walk into a shop and you see 46, 47 pounds on the shelf, Signatory 100 proof series, the full 70cl, fully natural. It's not cask strength, it's 57.1, 100 proof as it says, for 46, 47 pounds. There's nothing can touch it. It would make you wonder why anybody's buying anything else. But what it also proves is a desire that's out there for higher strength ABV whiskies, higher flavor whiskies. And that's kind of what started the explosion, arguably, in whiskey enjoyment back in the 80s. It's no coincidence that that's when SMWS first started off. There were other cask strength whiskies before SMWS, but there weren't many. But since then, look at the success of the Rare Malt series through the 1990s. Look at the successes of all the cask strength derived indies, various limited editions that's come out over the years, to the point that I argue that if you make good quality whiskey, it might be a good idea to put forward a cask strength example of your distillery for people like us. Here's my producer of 2025. Last year's producer of the year was Arran. And look, not only is this a cask strength, but it's 100% bourbon cask maturation with a 5-year age statement on it. This one just happens to be 60.9. Why is this good? Because if they're true to the description on this, cask strength, and they don't vat to match a strength, but they match the vat for flavour, then that 60.9 is going to change every time. So suddenly we don't demand that they say batch. I think this actually does say batch 1 on there. I was looking, I'm not sure, but it doesn't matter. We're going to have an instant indicator there. I encourage them to put the batch, whether it's 2025 release, 2026 release, batch 1, batch 2, whatever it may be, keep it going. This is proven to be a successful thing. I started off with a Lochlea cask strength, but here I've got, look at this, cask strength from Arran, and wouldn't you know, this has just been recently opened, as you can see. This is the most recent one, or one of the most recent ones, I'm not sure, but this is another. And I've been sipping these side by side and comparing them. Interestingly, my favorite is the older one, but that's okay. And I think it's going to change as time goes on. And how do we tell the difference here? Well, it's got the QR code there, but without even looking at the QR code, we've got one at 58.1% ABV, one at 58.3% ABV, genuine cask strength ABVs, but clear definition from one year to the next in order for us to understand that this is a different product. We enjoyed the last one. Wouldn't it be nice to trust in the new release? And if we've got some of the last ones still available, as in my case, then it's great fun to be able to do a wee sip and compare and contrast, right? Because this is what we love to do. And it's not just about demonstrating that there is a difference, there is an evolution, one's older, one's richer, one's, for whatever reason, they might be different, but it's a learning exercise for us as whiskey geeks. An appreciation, and articulation and processing and understanding the difference in nose and taste, and then looking at the QR code to see what the cask profiles are for each release to try and determine what's made those flavour changes or differences. These are the types of things that whiskey appreciation folk love to do, especially when the minimum floor of quality is guaranteed. So every time you go out and spend your 65 quid on a bottle of Arran cask strength, you know you're guaranteed a minimum quality. From there on in, it's just fun. Get the teaspoons out, get the water droppers out, do what you have to do. This is the type of thing that banishes doldrums. This is just good, geeky, healthy fun. Do you know what else it does? And this is how I'm going to finish this. We drink less. Roy, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Do you agree with me? Because I have to say, one of the best ways to ensure you drink good quality, more contemplatively, slower, with thought, is to put thought into what's going into the glass and thinking about it and slowing down. When you finish your bottle of Glenlivet 12 and you've enjoyed it, and you go back and you buy another bottle of Glenlivet 12, I'm going to suggest to you that at times you can also easily, somebody said boring a little bit earlier, but I would suggest it's not boring, it's actually mindless. You just start to drink. You start to drink. You start to drink. That's when the consumption of alcohol becomes for effect. And that's why the shelves are full of generic, mass-produced, efficiently made products, regardless of the sector that they're in. When you have things that are contrasting and demonstrably different in flavour each time from a different distillery, same distillery, different style, different country, different ABV, different cask, all of it is wonderful because every single sip is like eyes open, paying attention. Suddenly you work out, one day you'll have sat through an entire movie with 1.5 cls of whiskey. I know there's a middle-aged guy on YouTube on something called the vPub talking out of his backside, talking nonsense. There are enough of you in here tonight that know that what I've just said is not nonsense. It's almost like encouraging responsible drinking without the warning labels of a circle on the back with a silhouette of a pregnant woman with a slash through it and all of these kind of really, really ridiculous kind of nanny type things. Just no, this is really, really high quality stuff. Invest in this with fair amount of money, invest in it with a fair amount of time. Take your time, slow down. The rewards will be revealing. I have more alcohol surrounding me than it's difficult to rationalize until somebody understands what I do for a living. I think, I can't be sure, but since I got into whiskey 20 years ago, I think I sip less than I did before I got into whiskey. I drink less. Pure consumption, I mean. But that's not important. If I hadn't discovered whiskey, but I still enjoyed alcohol like I did before I discovered whiskey, how much would I be drinking of the generic mass market stuff? If I hadn't discovered flavor over consumption, what would I be doing today? I would like to think that I'm not the type of person that's going to succumb to abuse of alcohol. It's just not my vibe. It's not how I feel about it. It's not the same for everyone. But my personal use case has been that I have got into alcohol in a way that somehow, ironically, perversely, weirdly, strangely, has slowed down my consumption. I can get through an entire movie with a single pour. And it happens regularly. And I know that so many of you, maybe the vast majority of you that are in here tonight, know exactly what I'm talking about there. So all of these concepts that I see being valid for a decent strategy in 2026, because that's what I want to see rather than what I think is going to be successful, I think leans into all of that. It's drinking versus tasting. They are different things. They require different products. And one of those categories is on its backside right now. In 2026, it's not because it's whiskey. It's because people are drinking less. People are drinking less than they ever have right now today. That's why it's struggling. There's a saturation of brands, there's a saturation of choice, and there is a huge lack of definition. And the closer you go to watering down and getting close to 40%, the more you lose definition. If you focus on slowing down, drinking less, but drinking better, buying better, you're in good shape. And if you're a company that's focused on that and keeping the scale and the size and the strategy appropriate, I think you're also in good shape. Anyway, that's enough of me. I'm going to leave you with a kind of tongue-in-cheek prediction before we look forward to the quiz at the end and the vPub next week, which will be Roddy. Keeping my fingers crossed that Roddy and I can make the vPub happen next week. It's been long booked. It happened live on air, you might remember, but it's in for the 22nd, which is next week. I spoke to him a couple of nights ago, and we're up for it. Let's see what you're saying. Scroll up a wee bit. Graham Fraser is in. Evening, Roy. Good to see you, Graham. And Barfly's just home from a late shift. Hope everyone's good. We are good. All very nice to see you in here. DVDW, that's Dan. I think I can't agree more. Drink slower, enjoy more. Absolutely. Dan Allen is saying, good to see you. Are still romantic in 2026. Alan, I never change. Not when it comes to whiskey, fella. Danny Hebbington is saying exactly. My Saturday night is bourbon. If I have a nice cask strength, I'll maybe have two. If it's 40% Buffalo Trace, I'll drink half the bottle. This is critical because that is what the products are designed for. The neck pour is saying my university self would be in awe at my cupboards and ashamed at my lack of consumption. But you need the opportunity, and it only takes half an hour, 5 minutes. Maybe not if it's me. I need more time to get my points across. Very verbose, as you know. But if you could sit down with your university self and say, give me your time, I'm going to change your life. And just talk. I mean, if somebody had sat me down and said, this is completely different, and these are the reasons why. Sipping quality single malts is drinking responsibly, says Reb. Anything meant to be knocked back encourages abuse. We agree. Andy Hills is saying, often told I have a drink problem due to the size of the stash that we have. Not true, as we only have a dram or two 3 times a week. Aquavitae, likewise, often a single pour suffices. If you had a drink problem, it would be impossible for you to accumulate the stash that you enjoy today. Jimmy Legg is saying, how many of us have Ralphie to thank for transforming us from people who like whiskey to people who are fascinated by whiskey? Aquavitae, I know I do, says Jimmy Legg. Ralphie's been doing such a thing since 2009. It's difficult to get our head around times. Trippleberg is in. Trippleberg. There's no way that could be Walt. Is that you, Walt? Whiskey is not only for special occasions and discovery now. I wonder if that is Walt. Maybe not. Dorpass Whiskey saying, oh, hell yes, Roddy, fantastic. All the Roddy emojis piling in now. Gorm J saying, Aquavitae, I started my real whiskey journey when I found a whiskey importer that primarily imported independent bottlers. I went from drinking the same thing to searching for the next great single cask. You've probably fast-tracked there if it was that quick, but that's where we all end up. And I think, I hate to say this, and I want it to be taken very, very gently. The more an official bottler can lean on the model of an independent bottler, the better. I hope with everything I've said tonight, just kind of that makes sense. Peter is saying, just checking. Would it be a cocktail evening next week, Aquavitae, just to be prepared for the shock? If so, and don't think we'll get Roddy mixing drinks next week, but when it's a Roddy vPub, we never know what's in store. I'm not sure you realise this, Roy, but I love Roddy, says Jimmy Legg. I don't think Roddy realises how much he's loved. He's an endearing man. Can't wait to have him on next week. I'll pass on your regards, Jimmy, or you can do it yourself next week. Nick Pod is saying, so Ralphie even predates my university self. 2009. Yeah, there you go. This will be Ralphie's 17th year. And he's still on YouTube. Okay, so here's my tongue-in-cheek throwaway before we go into the quiz at the end. How are we doing on time? 1:56. That wasn't a bad wee run-in, was it? A wee way to blow the cobwebs away and brush off some of the rust. Arran 14. I've been predicting this for as long as the prediction session has kicked off the new year. Right? 2026 will be the year that we see a return of Arran 14. Arran's in good hands. Listen, whatever they bring out is an Arran 14. It's going to be a good product, but I would love if the Arran 14 used that extra age to use a bit more refill casks. A bit less reliant on that kind of raw kind of cask, dominant flavor profile. I know it's very, very tasty and it's very, very easy to enjoy and it's maybe easier to sell, especially with the color and things. But I would love to get closer back to this really elegant. This Arran 14, the 10-year-old was good at the time as well. But the Arran 14, when it came of age, it was the thing that made me realize that Arran was no longer a new distillery anymore, but a wonderfully mature and desirable spirit. I would love this product to be back on the shelf. I've been asking for it for absolute years. 2026. Please let that be the year that we finally see a true realization, rejuvenation of the original Arran 14. There we go. I'm going to put some in the glass, actually. The Arran 14 will be, I've got 2 empty glasses. This means I've had 4 drams. This will be my 5th. I'll get some Arran 14. This was actually a gift. Trying to remember who gave me this. It's a 750ml bottle. Oh, Phil and Deepa. I think this is maybe 750ml. It was from Phil and Deepa. Very quiet, very soft, compared to what I've just been sipping. Amongst the Sauternes and the cask strength Lochleas and the big creamy Bruichladdich, we've gone down to 46%. We're getting this really kind of floral edge. With floral's not the first thing that came to mind when I was imagining, but it's much more floral in the nose. It's just the balance, the poise, the gentle, easy confidence of it, the Scotch whiskiness of it, the kind of it's difficult to convey and struggle to find words. I know how this is going to taste from the nose. That florality is bringing a wee touch of hairspray. Roddy would like that. A spritz and effervescence. Lots of orchard fruit. That's what we need. There are whiskies like this on the market today that are similar to this in style and profile. Glencairn 10 would be a great example. A wee bit close to maybe Inchmurren from Lochlea. The 12-year-old is a little richer than this. But in the similar camp, there are similar whiskies to this. But what I'm talking about is a profile. It fits in that bucket. But this is a very, very precise example of the style. I think 14 years old is a great age for it. 14, 16, 18. High-end, precise, excellent, well-made, well-put-together, well-thought-out whiskey. I know Arran has struggled for stock, but the way it's knocking out the 10-year-old, we might never see the 14, but surely they've got enough refill casks available now in order to vat something together that can be as elegant and precise as that. I would be up for it. How about you? Jimmy Legacy, and I find Arran 14 to be one of the few whiskies that makes my mouth water instead of dry at the finish. Well, this is not a dry whiskey. This is I think this is the type of whiskey you could pour for somebody who truly, truly loves whiskey, Scotch whiskey, and they would occasionally, if not in the majority of times, over-age this whiskey. Think that they're sipping something a little bit more mature. I think this one is also benefiting from being in the open bottle for a little while. But that kind of floral side, that outdoor kind of field floral wildflower thing, but there's also that kind of the spritz thing, almost like the perfume, the hairspray, and then just this huge swathes of sweet red apples. Maybe some light sugar, but it's distant. Oak, furniture polish, beeswax. Superb. Superb. That's what I'd love. For me, Arran is a very sophisticated whiskey, says the neck pour. And by the way, it seems like I'm picking up the same comments. It's not that I'm favourite. It's just the people who are good at typing aquavite, lights up orange, and my eye is now trained after doing this for nearly for over 8 years now. It's just, that's what it's looking for. All right, I do have a quiz at the end. I just realised I'm a bit rusty and I didn't bring it in. Hopefully it'll just take me a second to grab it and upload it into the site so that we can close out with the first vPub of 2026 with the obligatory quiz at the end. The numbers will drop off. It's always going to drop off, you guys. I know you're not all here for the quiz. A lot of you don't enjoy the quiz. I like to encourage people, and the amount of people that I like meeting people that say, oh no, I never liked a quiz at the end because I never knew the answers. I found it a bit hard. I never got anything right. I'm not really one for quizzes. No. And the amount of people that say, you know what, I actually found myself staying for the quiz. I was finishing my drama anyway, so I stayed for it. And now the quiz is a wee bit of a highlight. I quite look forward to it. In fact, Roy, it annoys me when you go too late and I might miss the quiz. So, thank you. I started the vPub in 2017 with a quiz at the end. I think that if I stopped the quiz at the end, there would be terrible scenes. So we remain with a quiz at the end, and we do so tonight, this evening. Okay. Danny Hebington is saying, I don't know the answers, but my pals do. So you're using the Not only multiple choice, Danny, but you're using the fact that you're playing along with the chat at the end or at the lounge. It's absolutely fine. Did I see a familiar name there? I saw Pregarious Dave is in, but I thought I saw a name, a blast from the past. I thought I saw the word Bowman there. Well, it's Bowman 1989, Rob. There used to be a fella back that hung around the vPub back in the day, the Whisky Bowman. Good to see you in, Bowman, Rob. Good to see you. Quiz, what quiz? Danny Hebbington, sorry, I picked you up, didn't I? Jimmy saying, we're all here for the quiz, Aquavidi. Some of us just haven't realised it yet. Eric is saying, there would be a mutiny. Mike Molasses is saying, mutiny would ensue if there was no quiz. The quiz makes my brain bigger, says Rick Johnson. Let's do this, Aquaviti. Falscraft is saying, my malt whiskey yearbook at the ready. I've dipped heavily into the malt whiskey yearbook for tonight's quiz. So you, class, are in good shape. I lean heavily on the barflies for the quiz. You are welcome to do so. Graham Young has bought me a dram. You superstar, Graham. Cheers for 2026. He's saying, hope that we care package made you smile. I'll open that bottle soon. Cheers and see you at Leith. Here it is, lit up and looking fantastic. A 23-year-old Canadian single malt whiskey from the superstar Graham Young. I imagine that when I finally open that, it's going to surpass the maple syrup that you gifted me. But the maple syrup, Graham, that's what you need to keep bringing, big guy. We can buy that here, occasionally at Costco, but it's expensive. And I suspect it's not as good as the stuff you brought me. I'll pull a Gregor and say Ardnamurchan before the first question, says Andrew. That's superb. Pepe Bruno, 1672. Pepe, good to have you, buddy. Saying Happy New Year. Doing a dry January set, but I'm here live for once. Listen, there's a lot of people out there doing dry January. If that works for you, I wish you the very, very best with it. I know for a lot of people, when there's so much kind of social things going on, and especially if you're a whiskey geek and you love whiskey and things, getting through dry January does take some dedication and real determination too. So I raise ironically, and I don't mean to poke fun, I raise a glass to say well done everybody, stay strong. You're halfway through already, and we'll see you back in February when you're ready to raise a wee dram for us all. Callum is in tonight and he's also doing dry January as well. Cheers everyone. And thank you for the dram, Pepe. Oh, that Arran is beautiful. It's literally beautiful whiskey. Jimmy's saying Graham Young is all about giving. As you know, I hope everyone here gets to meet him someday. He's a true gentleman. He really is. He's absolutely one of the best. And he keeps coming back and he seems to be happy here and enjoying it. And why would you not? Graham, he is amazing. So are you, Jimmy. You are wonderful too, despite the way you like to portray yourself. And Yuri, Simply About Whiskey, is saying there is 5 different Highland Park expressions in me and only 2 of them official bottling. God help me with the quiz, please. Okay, Yuri, good luck with it, buddy. Let's say put the wheels on. It's multiple choice. You're only playing against yourself. It's meant for fun. And even the really difficult questions, I hope that at least half the time there's a chance they've sent you away thinking about something or being a wee bit more curious about whiskey in general. If you're leaving before we get into the quiz at the end, thanks for joining me tonight, and I look forward to welcoming you back at a vPub in the future. If you have enjoyed yourself, please don't leave without leaving a like. It does really, really help. Let's have a wee look at the likes. I might have an out-of-date screen here, but there are only 28 likes in, and at the peak tonight we had nearly 400 of you in. Things have not got that rude on YouTube, have they? It's my fault. I need to start remembering to ask for them. Thank you all. Okay. It just says 18th here. I am suddenly worried that I haven't uploaded the right thing. Let's hope that that's the only mistake in this quiz tonight. Let's see. Question 1. I'm nervous now. Which of the following distilleries offers a production ethos that could be described as single estate? No, I think the quiz is fine. 158 right now, says Andrew. Okay, so I've just got a very out-of-date screen. If I refresh my YouTube feed, that would probably come up 183. Thank you very much, Andrew. You're spot on. Just need to change that and that now. So there we go. Which of the following distilleries offers a production ethos that could be described as single estate? Three choices are A, Jackton, B, Lochlea, or C, Ballindalach. So Jackton and Lochlea in the lowlands, or Ballindalach in Speyside. Precarious Dave is suggesting fun. Did he say fun? It was nice to see you on Monday night, Dave. It's nice to see you in here tonight as well, buddy. Well, at least a chance for a wee 5-minute chat on Monday. Sometimes we see each other and we don't even get a chance to chat. And she's in here. Daisy Vleeland is here. Good to see you, Daisy. I hope you're keeping well. I hope the Netherlands are not too cold. Looking forward to seeing you this year. Maybe I'll bump into you at the Spirits, Independent Spirits in Leith. Callum Renton is suggesting that it's B. Jimmy Jass is saying that it's B. Ginger Genius John is saying B as well. Paul Gids is also saying B, and Jimmy Legg is saying B, suggesting that Lochlea could be called a single estate. Well, it's the new year. I want the theme for 2026 to be happiness, whiskey happiness, enjoyment of whiskey, fun, all of those things. So I'm going to start off by making sure that nobody goes home with a donut. Yes, all of these distilleries could theoretically be described as single estate. Jackton does everything on site. Lochlea does everything bar the malting and bottling, and Ballindalach the same. However, they all use their own barley, much like you could suggest that Daft Mill and some others and some other expressions could be theoretically single estate whiskies as well. Everybody gets a 1 out of 1 to start. Question 2, though. Which of these distilleries has been managed by the now retired former manager of Tomatin, Graham Unson? There was a great vPub that we did, focusing mostly on wood maturation and casks and things with Graham way back. I think we're maybe about 3 or 4 years beyond now. He was a great guest and he's a great guy. But he was the manager of Tomatin. Where else has he also been the manager? A, Glenmorangie in the Highlands, B, Ben Nevis in the Western Highlands, or C, Glenglassaugh in the Eastern Highlands. Where has Graham Unson also been a manager? A, Glenmorangie, B, Ben Nevis, C, Glenglassaugh. Danny Hebington is saying, we'll see how charitable things are at question 10. Gordon Fraser is in. Gordon, good to see you, buddy. I hope you're keeping well. I hope the weather isn't too exposed and brutal for you this winter up there on the West Coast. It's great to have you in here. We're actually just about to slide into the first few minutes of Friday morning. Not too late. Absolutely everyone is suggesting, I think, C on this one for Glenglassaugh. Bob Wenting is saying first met him as the manager of GM. So GM could stand for many things. It could be Glen Murray, Gordon MacPhail. It could be Glenmorangie. Thanks, Bob. Nice to have you in, buddy. Fairnight Walker is saying thinking A, but I'm going to follow you guys and go C. Jimmy Legg is saying, hasn't everyone managed Glenglassaugh? Weren't you the manager there once, Aquafiti? I don't think it's been that bad. But I like Fairnight Walker's philosophy. Either way would have worked for you, buddy, because both Glenmorangie and Glenglassaugh are correct. He was at both. Glenmorangie first, then he was involved in the revival of Glenglassaugh before moving over to Tomatin. Question 3. It does get progressively trickier, don't worry. Question 3. You can view the ruins of Dunnevig Castle from which of these distilleries? Now, there's a couple of ways to pronounce Dunnevig. Dunnevig, Dunnevig. There's lots of pronunciations. Forgive me. I hope you know the castle I'm talking about. You can see it from where? A, Lagavulin on Islay, B, Jackton in the Lowlands, or C, Binrinnes in Speyside. Where can you see the ruins of Dunnevig Castle? So Moorish. So after all that nonsense I was talking about sitting on the sofa with a single 1.5 CL pour for 2 hours, I've managed to absolutely demolish this wee Arran 14 in the space of just a few minutes, to the point that I'm going to quietly top up the glass rather than pour something else. I'm very, very, very much enjoying this wee whiskey. Such an elegant little thing that it is. So pretty. It deserves Another wee go in the glass. Absolutely everyone seems to be comfortable on their own with this one. There's no bonus. It's not like a guaranteed answer or a 66% chance. You're right down to 33% chance. There's only one that's correct here, but you've all nailed it. We're on Islay, and of course, we're talking about Lagavulin. I took a wee screenshot from a video that I did years ago. I caught this with a drone. Of course I did. I didn't fly up the hot air balloon. No, it was a drone. That's Duniveg in the foreground with Lagavulin in the background over Lagavulin Bay. That's the taken from the Scotch Test Dummies. A video called Dummies in Scotland Part 2. I love those videos that I made back then. They were great fun to record and good fun to make as well. Question 4. In what year was the Campbelltown Malts Festival first celebrated? How long has the Malts Festival in Campbelltown been going? The first festival was in A, 1999, B, 2009, C, 2019. What was the first Campbelltown Malts Festival? Eric is saying, Aquavita, I love that video. Thank you, buddy. I like it too. I actually went back, I think it was just at the start of the break before Christmas, and I was actually recommended my own video on my own feed. Listen, I was signed in as a different account. I wasn't signed in as Aquavita, but it came up and I clicked on it just to, I don't know, nostalgia or something. And, Scott Bart, the whole Islay thing, everything was there. I remembered some of the things that happened. It was amazing. Donnerpass Whiskey, those were beautiful videos, Roy. There was a third video. There was supposed to be a third. It was supposed to be a trilogy, but the memory card went missing. I came back from the trip and one of the memory cards was gone. And unfortunately, I was really frustrating because we had we got permission to fly a drone over Macallan. We got some amazing drone footage over some of the lochs, Loch Ness. It was a real bummer. It's probably my fault, of course. Okay, everyone's going for B on this one. 2009. You're all absolutely correct. It was 2009. Relatively new festival. Much newer than Islay Malts Festival, of course, but going very, very strong. I'm hoping that I can make it in May this year again. Question 5. We're looking at a distillery. We're looking at a distillery. You might want to look in the reflection of the glass here so that we can decide where are we. What are we looking at? We're looking at a distillery in A, Scotland, B, New Zealand, or C, Scandinavia. Define Scandinavia. Well, I think there's a difference between the definition of Nordics and Scandinavia. But if I was to define Scandinavia in this context, I would be talking about Finland, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. But I think I might have made a mistake by suggesting Finland as part of Scandinavia. So apologies to any Finns watching. Iceland, the Faroes. I think all of those make up the Nordics, right? Where are we? Are we in Scotland, New Zealand, or Scandinavia? Graham Fraser has got a bit of a lag on the stream. Is that on my side or yours? We'll go A, says James Morgan. Lassie Hortz Otsman is in, and it's good to see you, Lassie. How are you doing? Mikey Hay is in. Fantastic. Randy Rice as well. They're all going for C. Yes, we're back. And Yuri also going for C. George P., Big Jimmy Jazz, and Falsgraf all going for C. Rick Johnson, however, is sticking with A along with Bob Wenting. Gene Kelly, Gino, Fairnight Walker, Daisy Vleeland, and Lachlan Mackenzie. And I have to say, those are the guys that are correct. We are actually looking at Lochranza's new extension. I think this is an artist's impression rather than an actual picture of the actual distillery. But yeah, we're looking at Lochranza Distillery in Scotland. If anybody's ever visited Lochranza, I think the mountain behind the distillery might give it away, or the height of the hills, where the eagles were nesting. But sorry if I tried to suggest otherwise. But that's Lochlea. It's appropriate because that's what's in the glass as well. Okay, it's the tough run in now. We're on the back 9, as they say in golf. Which of these Scotch malt distilleries has planning permission to develop and open a remote new visitor centre close to Glasgow? When I say close to Glasgow relatively speaking. If I tell you where, it would give it away. So let's just say within an easy day trip of Glasgow. Which of these Scotch malt distilleries has planning permission to develop and open a remote new visitor centre close to Glasgow? A. Glenlivet in Speyside. B. Loch Lomond in the Southern Highlands. Or C. Highland Park in Orkney. Which of those distilleries has planning permission? I should have checked as to what condition or what state. Has it started development yet? But I didn't. Apologies. Remote visitor centre. What I mean about remote visitor centre, Jimmy Legg, is the fact that the visitor centre is remote from the distillery. There is a desire from this distillery to give you a visitor centre that's accessible. That's all I'll say. Let's see what Jimmy is going to answer. Keeping his cards close to his chest. But we're either Glenlivet and Speyside, Loch Lomond, Southern Highlands, Highland Park and Orkney. I can tell you that the visitor centre is one that's been hopefully going to be developed by Loch Lomond. Loch Lomond is in a very industrial area. There's lots and lots of reasons why a visitor centre is not going to be possible or practical or even desirable to be on the site where Loch Lomond Distillery actually resides, but they are looking at putting together one in Luss on Loch Lomond side. Beautiful wee place, Luss. If you've ever visited there, I hope that a repurposed smokehouse in Luss will only add to the draw, desire, and the aesthetic of the place. Question 7. After being founded in 1877 with the merging of 7 lowland grain distilleries, DCL, Distillers Company Limited that is, built its first malt distillery. But what was it? Should be a banana skin here. A. Nakandu. B. Knockdhu. C. Manachmore. One of those 3 distilleries was the first distillery built by DCL. It may not be the first malt distillery owned by DCL. Be careful, it's the first one that they built. Gordon Fraser is saying there used to be a whiskey bar there, Aquavite, a whiskey bar in Luss. Sounds great. I love Loch Lomond side. Loch Lomond is just we're so fortunate in Glasgow just to be able to just take a wee short drive north and just have that splendour on our doorstep. It's just fabulous. Okay, I can tell you that Graham Young is saying Blee. Callum is going for B for Knockdhu. Ian Bruce is going for B. Neckpore B. Andrew B. Jimmy Jazz is going for A. Cal Taylor B. Lassie B. There is quite a mix. Mike Molasses is going for A. Nobody's thinking it's Manachmore. I think most of you know that Manachmore is a 1970s distillery, which makes it a 50-50 choice between Nakandu and Knockdhu. Nakandu is still owned by Diageo today, but it was 1898. In 1893, Knockdhu was the first distillery they built. Knockdhu is now owned by Inverhouse and it's sold under the Anok brand. So for all of you that voted for Blee, give yourself a point. Well done. Question 8. Which of these distilleries has, on occasion and specifically by its owners, been referred to as the garden distillery. We're looking for a distillery that is referred to on occasion by the owners as the garden distillery. A. Tormore in Speyside. B. Glengrant in Speyside. C. Glenkinchie in the Lowlands. What a horrible question, Roy. My goodness. Let's see how we're getting on for marks after 7 questions. How many 7s? Oh, there's lots of high scores, lots of 6s, some 5s. Actually, we're seeing some 7s here. Wow. Daisy, 7 out of 7. Lachlan Mackenzie, 7. The Neck Pour, Phil Wagner, Rick Johnson, Ginger Genius, Bob Wenting, Donner Pass, Sugar Kitty, Gordon Fraser, 7 for 7 Bowman, knocking it out the park. His words and mine. We're in great shape. I thought the quiz would be trickier than that. I didn't want to make it too easy for you coming back into the new year. Daisy is saying, but C rings a bell too. Okay, she's swithering a wee bit. Needs to have a wee think for a minute. Precarious Dave is going for B. Springer G is going for B. Dave the Brave is in and going for B. Billy Bennett B. Lots and lots of B's coming in. Love the chuckle, says Gordon. I'm flying inches off the sun. What did you answer, big guy? What did you answer? Oh, no. No. Daisy is saying C. It is. Daisy sneaks in at the last second. Glengrant, Tormore, both famous for their gardens. But interestingly, the garden distillery, as suggested by Diageo, is Glenkinchie in the Lowlands, a part of the Four Corners reimagination thing. They poured a lot of money into their garden there, and they still refer to it occasionally from time to time today. But I picked up this factoid, of course, in the Malt Whisky Yearbook 2026. Tormore does have gardens, famous for it. Perhaps the most splendid gardens, I've never visited them, but would like to, is Glengrant. Question 9. Spot the distillery not located in Canada. I'm going to give you 3 distilleries. 2 of them are Canadian. 1 of them is not. All you have to do is tell me which one is not Canadian. Penultimate question. A. Douglas or Doveglass, depending on how you pronounce it. Côte des... Oh, okay, I'm struggling with pronunciation all over the place here probably, but Côte de Santé, maybe? Côte de Santé? I think it's Côte de Santé, I think. And C, Old Farm Distillery. A lot of play with language here, as you would imagine, in Canada. A colonial country, of course. Spot the distillery not located in Canada, though. Douglas or Doveglass, Côte de Santé or Old Farm Distillery. Côte de Santé. It's going to be somebody French or French speaking in here that can help me out there. A, Douglas or Doveglass, depending on your Gaelic dialect. That's basically black green, to my mind. The black green. Or the hidden green. Maybe the hidden green. Jimmy Legg, who's in Canada, is suggesting that it's C, as is the majority of others. But Fair Nightwalker is saying, okay, I have no idea at all. It's a cracking emoji you've used there as well. Superb. Graham Young is also Canadian, suggesting C, Phil Wagner, Springer G, Pete Head, Sugar Kitty, Callum Renton, George O'Brien. Good to see you, George. How are you doing? Nice to have you in. If it's the George O'Brien I'm thinking of, maybe a brand new George O'Brien. It's still fantastic to have you here. Shamefully going with the crowd, says Eric Cunliffe. No problem at all. And that's a Canadian saying so. That hence the shame. I can tell you that Old Farm Distillery is in New Zealand, I think. I think it's in New Zealand. So there we go. Douglas and Côte de Santé, or Salt, I don't know, they are both in Canada. Okay, we head towards the asshat at the end. How are the scores? Kyle Taylor's on a 6 this week. Kyle, a few banana skins have caught you out, buddy. I hope you'll be back next week to your regular strength. Gene Kelly on a 7. Alan Smith on a 6. Lachlan on a 7. How's the higher scores? Oh, Mike Molasses on an 8. Just as it jumps, I'm looking for the 9s here now. Not many 9s. There seems to be a lot of attrition. Gino is hanging in there on a 9 along with Rick Johnson. Amazing, guys. 9 out of 9 for... Oh my goodness, there aren't many of you. Sneak it. Graham Young is sneaking a 9 out of 9. Graham Fraser is sneaking a 9 out of 9. Wow. Okay, so there doesn't seem to be many 9s remaining, but there's still 3 or 4 in with a chance. The asshat at the end is deliberately designed to be horrible. You need to know the answer to 2 different things to get it right. This is much luck as it is judgment. How many Scotch malt distillery companies own 4 or more Scotch malt distilleries? Is it about the same number as A, Speyside Distilleries owned by Chivas Regal, Chivas Brothers, Pernod Ricard? Is it B, about the same number as Lowland Distilleries located in Fife? Or is it C, about the same number as Eastern Highland Distilleries located north of Aberdeen? Oh, Jerry, don't be so defeatist, my friend. Jerry Miller is saying on an 8 out of 9, so not so concerned about losing a 10. So he's not so intimidated by the asshat. I can understand it. I have had the occasional situation where I've been sitting here with a Menno on a 9 out of 9. I think it's only happened once. The asshat's popped up and the nerves, I felt it. And I failed. Too slow is in, but he's saying no. I just realize here as I'm sitting with you all how much I enjoy it. Thank you for hanging out with me. It means a lot, and I love it. Thank you. Daisy is guessing that it's A. Gino is laughing out loud. Precarious Dave is saying B. Lowland Distilleries located in Fife. Jimmy Legg is also going for B. Ginger Genius John is going for B as well. Whisky Mondays, that's Peter Lee, isn't it? Good to see you, Peter. He's going for C. Pete Head Frank is going for C as well, joining his pal Peter. Big Jimmy Jazz is also going for C along with Danny Evanson. So there's quite a split. Exactly the design and idea of the asshat at the end. The Nickport is saying, thank you for bringing us all together. You're very, very welcome, my friend. I know who you are. I've been thinking about it all night. And a big pour is Neil Laverty. That's not you. But I know you, fella. We've met. We've hung out, haven't we? And I'm sorry. You're welcome, Roy, says Jimmy Legg. George P is saying, thanks for hanging out with us. We'll wait for the Nickport to reveal who they are. I have to remember who they are. You're very welcome, George P. It's brilliant to have you in here, buddy. Thank you. All right, I can reveal the amount of Scotch malt distilleries is either 11, because that's the number of Speyside distilleries owned by Chivas Regal, Pernod Ricard, or Lowland distilleries located in Fife, number 5, or Eastern Highland distilleries located north of Aberdeen, number 8. Does that help you? Are you going to have to change your mind and maybe admit that you got the asshat wrong? What's it going to be? I can tell you. I'll give you a moment. I can tell you. In fact, I'm going to read them out. I wrote them down because the distilleries I'm talking about is Macduff, Ardmore, Glengarry, Balmaud, Brewdog, Glendronach, Glenglassaw, and hence the about, depends on how you define Knockdhu. It is actually distilleries that are in the Eastern Highlands, yet located north of Aberdeen. numbering 8. Now, if Knockdhu is a Speyside distillery to you, it's 7. It's still by far the closest. Still makes C the right answer. I know that I have upset a lot of people. Truly, we haven't met, says the neck pour. Hopefully, 2026 Glasgow Whisky Festival. I still don't remember who you are, buddy, but that doesn't matter. Tonight, you're in as the neck pour, and it's wonderful to have you here. Jimmy Legg celebrating a 7 out of 10. Good score, very strong score. I think it was a tricky one to bring us back into the new year, Jimmy. Jerry Miller is saying 9. Fantastic for that. Damn it, says Billy Bennett on a 7. Danny's celebrating an 8. Daisy's on a 9. That wasn't even on my radar, says Daisy. Yeah, no, it's tricky. It's so ass-hatty. Sugar Kitty Jeff has nailed it. He's on a 10 out of 10. He might be the only one tonight. Peter Lee, Whiskey Mondays bought me a dram to say thanks for a great into an evening. Great to have you back on the TV and making whiskey more enjoyable. The maple syrup is better than the whiskey. It's hard to admit, Peter, but you might be right. I adore this stuff. You can become addicted to that. I'm sure there's people out there that have maple stream flavoured live streams. I love it. I love it on pancakes. I love it on toast. I love dipping things in it. And there must be a multitude of ways I haven't discovered how to enjoy good quality maple syrup, but I'll give it a go. 8 out of 10 based on the late clue, but still no 10, says Gene Kelly. Unlucky, buddy. I hope you're back next week or sometime in the very near future to go for it again. Sugar Kitty saying, and when I saw the numbers revealed, I still thought I got it wrong. Brilliant, but you nailed it. You got it. You got a 10 out of 10 tonight. Jimmy Leggs bought me a generous dram. I've just realised that I know how many cool people there are in the world. Approximately 26,000. Have your reference to the subscriber count. Jimmy, I love you, man. Thank you. And it's not just because you bought me a dram, fella. Cheers, big guy. Too Slow Rob, celebrating a 7 out of 10. Gene Kelly is saying kudos to the 10s. If you're picking this up in the replay and you managed to nail a 10, well done to you, because that was actually quite a tricky wee quiz at the end to bring people into the new year. But that's what it should be about. The quiz should be achievable, but not easy. I think it's really hard balance, and the questions getting gradually trickier as well. Yuri's saying thank you for a first great vPub of 2026. All the best for every one of us. And to you, Roy, of course, in 2026 from Yuri. Thank you so much, Yuri. Right back at you, my friend. Petehead is saying, with that, I call it a day and going to hit sack. Thanks for organising and bringing us together, Aquaviti. Until I love you, see you next time. Slancheva. Thank you, big guy. So nice to have you in. Too Slow. Good to have you, Rob. Andrew saying, what fun. Thanks, Roy, and all the barflies. Gino is celebrating being a member for 69 months of the barfly, saying Happy New Year, Roy, and all the other barflies. Danny Hebington's bought me a dram to say the 2026 season has officially started. Slancha to everyone. Danny, one day you and I will meet and raise a wee cheeky glass of whiskey together as well. Yes, I very much enjoyed this evening. I knew that I would. I enjoyed my rest. I enjoyed 2025. It really brought lots and lots of fun for me. It was a busy old year. The rest was fantastic, but it was also rehabilitating, and it's recharged me fully. Coming back here, sitting in the vPub seat once more, and hanging out with you, maybe helped a wee bit by this lovely wee Arran 14 in the glass, has made me realise how much fun it is. I look forward to everything that we can achieve in 2026. I hope your year is fantastic. But in the meantime, I'm going to raise this wee last sip of the Arran. Thank you all for joining me on the first vPub back in 2026. I look forward to hanging out with you with Roddy next week. But until then, I'll remind you all that you're very dearly loved. Slancheva, all of you.